Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. For those of you who don't know, my name's Rich and I run and operate the Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport, and we can be found on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram primarily, and these videos can be found on our YouTube channel. So do go to any of those platforms, search for the Hard Compound, come in and join the fun. We're here to share a love of motorsport. Nothing else, no arguments, no nonsense. We're just there to share a love of motorsport. And we do this in the form of 3 written articles every day. These go out at 9 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and around 8 o'clock here in the UK. Morning, lunchtime, and evening. And they take the form of race reviews, race previews, throwbacks, birthdays, livery reveals, breaking news, and anything else that we can shake a stick at. And there's always plenty going on. So do come and join us. We cover everything from F1 to touring cars, IndyCar, NASCAR, bikes, rallying, Aussie Supercars, the World Endurance Championship, as I say, anything we can shake a stick at. So come along, join in the fun. We'd love to have you on board. In case you haven't noticed, we also do live video interviews just like this one, and just like this one, these go out on our Facebook, our Twitter, and our YouTube channel. As I said, they're automatically saved in the live section on YouTube and in the video section on Facebook, so you can watch them back whenever you like. We're also in the process of putting them onto podcast providers, so you'll be able to listen to them when you're out and about, if you so wish. I won't name all the guests that we've had on. We've had well over 150 now, which is amazing. But just as a flavour, we've had the likes of Mr. Mario Andretti and Jackie Ickx and Jackie Oliver, Hans Stuck, Chip Ganassi, guys like David Brabham, and like Derek Warwick has been on, Will Power, Alex Palou, Alonso Jr., Danny Sullivan, Emanuele Pirro, Mika Salo, Ukyo Katayama, Takuma Sato. We've had drivers from the W Series, most of the British touring car grid, past and present, including legends like Steve Soper and John Cleland and Paul Radisich, and Greg Murphy's been on, and many others. So do go and check those out as and when you get the chance, but don't do it just yet, because we have got another terrific guest joining us in the next minute or so. He's raced in British Formula 3 for West Surrey Racing, for those of you who know the current British touring cars. He's a Formula Ford champion. He's raced at Macau. He's raced in the Formula Ford Festival. He's a double Mexican F3 champion. He's raced in Indy Lights. He's done plenty, and we're going to talk about it right now. So without any further ado, please join me in extending a very warm welcome to Mr. Derek Higgins.
Good evening.
Evening, Derek. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Good. Some of that long rambling intro, it gets a long.
That was very good. Good guess.
Got to take a breath.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But no, we're all good. So yes, thank you very much for coming on, having a chat. Obviously, we were going to do this a few weeks back, but things got jumbled. But we've got it rescheduled. I'm very glad we have.
Yep.
So we're all good. So how is everything with you so far?
Good. Yep. Yeah, no, it's all good. So start with. I guess it's the start of a new season coming up. You got MotoGP, you got F1. I mean, MotoGP was good the first race, although it was, but you got F1 this weekend, and it all starts, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly. We've got IndyCars underway, which is obviously.
That's right. IndyCar was 2 weeks ago, and they've got another race a week away, haven't they?
Yes, they have.
Thermal. They got a thermal, don't they?
Oh yes, the thermal one, which is a bit of an odd one, isn't it?
I'm trying to see if they're going to actually have fans there this year.
Yes, it was all very corporate last year, wasn't it?
It was very strange, non-points event and all the weird things that go on. But IndyCar racing is good. I actually enjoy watching IndyCar racing. I think it's underrated for what it should be. I don't think people know enough about it over here.
Yeah.
I think everyone over here wants to watch Formula One. But I think they're missing out on how good IndyCar is. And if anyone ever gets the opportunity to go to Indy to do the 500, do it. Just absolutely. And then go and stand at turn 1, qualifying, and watch a car go through a corner at 240 mile an hour and go, yeah, that's not real. It's not real. It's one of the most impressive things I've ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, those who sort of tune into these chats will know I'm a massive IndyCar fan. Have been for years. I mean, ever since I saw Rick Mears win it in '88.
Right.
It was behind the safety car, but I was still like, what is this thing, this Indy 500? And it got me hooked. I shoehorn IndyCar into every chat somehow.
Yeah.
And I went to the 500 in 2022 when Marcus Ericsson won.
Oh,
And
okay, right.
it was sensational. As you say, I mean, I've actually got some video on my phone, and I was just holding it dead straight, watching the cars go past, and you can't fathom how quick they're going.
It's funny. I'd been in America, but I'd not been to the 500 because I was like, oh, I don't really want to go. I'm not a big fan of going to watch races. And then I ended up going as a spotter the first year for, I can't remember, I think it was Tagliani. But the whole
He's been on. Alex has been on.
Yeah, no, I was his spotter when he was at Conquest when we did this weird museum-sponsored car.
Oh,
but
yeah.
the whole spectacle, from the time you get there, you're like, this is just unreal. It's like no other sporting event in the world. And, you know, when you tell people there's 350,000 people there, and they go, no, there's no way. They go, yeah, there's 350,000, not the 500 that they used to talk about. But it's a race that I just think, I'm glad we get it over here on Sky. You know, it's good, although I hope that they do the same coverage that they did before, because I think the coverage was really good, and you know, not having commercials was a big thing. But hell of a race. I've gone there now and spotted a few times, and just every time you go there, you just go to turn one, just once, just to watch the cars and just go, this is stupid.
Because our seats were outside of turn 4, but we went for carb day. We decided quite late to go to carb day, and we stood on the inside of turn 1, and it's almost stupid, isn't it? I mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, I think it was Rosenquist was the first car that came past, and we all just went, whoa!
Yeah, what's funny is,
what the hell was that?
When you look at the track, you think, it's not that difficult. It doesn't look, there's not a lot to it. You know, there's not, you know, the corners don't look that tight. They look like they're very long radius, but God, when something goes wrong, it's a plane crash.
Yeah. I mean, and as I said, I've had on here people who have raced in it and won it and things like that, and people who have had it go wrong. I mean, like Roberto Guerrero, obviously was in a coma for a while when he just said, even after that, I still love the place. You know,
I remember there was one really bad one for Bourdais.
Yes.
Well, that one where he went into the wall coming out of 2.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, I mean, there was Hinchcliffe's one. When
Hinch has been on, and he got speared, didn't he, through the thigh?
Oh, that was brutal. That's the hardest thing. I think the hardest thing about that was the one thing I found really difficult, going to an oval from, you know, being over doing all street races and stuff like that, going to an oval and realizing that if something went wrong, but it wasn't your fault, that was when it scared you. That you were always on the edge of, like, if you made a mistake, you went, okay, I made the mistake. You know, I spun a couple of times, or I hit the wall, and it was my mistake. But when something broke, and you're like, okay, what happened? You know, that's I think is that fear factor that that the drivers in IndyCar are really good at. Like, they can get through that very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of danger thing. I mean, the first person I spoke to was Ari Leyendijk, and when he was talking about it, my jaw was on the floor.
He did one. Like, he still holds the 4-lap record, doesn't he? Still.
Yeah. Was it 1990?
Yeah, but it didn't count because it wasn't qualifying. Because it was the week. That was the second, when they had the second week.
Yes.
You know, not the first. He didn't do it on the first week. But I mean, I don't know. I think IndyCar's great. I mean, it looks like it's even more competitive this year. Well, be interesting to see how Palou does again, because man, how he's not in Formula One is
it's staggering, isn't it?
Maybe you'll get the Cadillac ride.
That would be good. I'd be all over that.
Yeah, I think he's got a good chance of the Cadillac ride, because I think they might take him and Herter.
Well, I was going to say they'd be the two that I'd take. If it was 20 years ago, I'd take Scott Dixon.
God, yeah. I just hope they don't put Ricardo in.
Or Perez. Nothing against those guys.
Oh, no. Let's get back. We need something fresh. You know, there's Formula One, especially with Cadillac. They need to go in not doing something dead weight again.
Yeah, we need a fully fresh entry, in my opinion. Yes. But we'll come to Indy and Indy lights and spotting and stuff a bit later. There's already a question about a spotter. Diffan, hello, Diffan Evans. We will come to that question when we come to it. Right, so just very quickly, also hello to the folks who are tuning in. Plenty of you already, which is lovely. Keith Mayle, Diffan Evans, and John Kane, and Tash Stratton. And who else have we got? John is in and Mike is in. All you guys, if you have any comments or questions, pop them in the comments section and we will work them in as we go. But we've got plenty to get through. Now, best place to start, I think, is at the very start. Where did your interest in motorsport come from? When was it that you thought?
Well, my dad, it all started with my dad, because I was born in Ireland, so I was born in Dublin, and my dad moved from Ireland to come over and work over here in building GT40s at Ford. Then ended up going to work for Bruce McLaren. And so he was a fabricator, and he actually was part of building the first F1 car that McLaren actually built. So way back in 65. So I grew up around racing. So I remember going to the McLaren factory when I was like 4 or 5 and seeing the Can-Am cars and the F1 cars, and then going to Goodwood with my dad and watching them all do that sort of stuff. So really that's where I always had an interest, and then I never thought I'd ever be a driver. And then one Christmas or New Year, we went and watched a go-kart race at Blackbush. And so the week or 2 weeks after, ended up buying a go-kart. So there was me and my mum and my dad. I'd sit on my dad's lap or sit on my mum's lap and drive around in a go-kart. And it was up until the time that I actually ended up going quicker than my dad, was then all of a sudden I could have the opportunity to have a go-kart. So it was all go-karts. So I started with go-karts, did go-karts for a long time, 10, 12 years probably, from the age of 11. And I got an opportunity to drive a car because, and it was an old Formula Ford called a Sark. It's really old, really, really wide, big, wide, old. Like probably it was a 76 car, and this was back in 86 when I started driving. But I got this opportunity to drive it, to do a test at Goodwood, and it went quite well. And then somehow my dad had just started a business fabricating cars and building clubman's cars. So he used to he welded all the chassis for the club. For I can't remember the name of the guy that was involved in it. Mallock.
Oh yeah, was it Ray?
Yeah, Ray Mallock. So he was making the chassis for that, and somehow out of that business, I got an opportunity to do a couple of races, and that's where it started with Formula Ford. And then I happened to do a couple of. I did a race of Champions of Brands, or one of the Formula Ford Brands Hatch races, and I did really well in an old Van Diemen. And Burt Ray came up to me and said, "Oh, you're going to do the junior series next year?" And I went, "Oh yeah, that's my plan." He said, "Well, I'll give you a chassis. You run my chassis," which was the Ray chassis, and that's how it really sort of that was the opportunity that then made it more financially viable for me to then get the opportunity to do the Townsend Torreson and the Dunlop Star of Tomorrow.
Yes. Okay.
So I ended up winning both of those, and then that got me the Van Diemen, the Duckham's ride.
Well, there you go. Because I always like the story of how people kind of firstly get into karts and then they make the transition from karts to cars, because there's so many different stories and different ways that it comes about. So but the thread that always runs through is, and then I met so and so, and and it comes from like a sponsor or a team owner who happened to be there at the same time. I mean, did you have?
No, I didn't have a sponsor. I mean, I think I mean, it was funny. There's myself and a guy I remember that I would say went through the same sort of deal as I did, and we both got to different levels. It was Johnny Herbert. So Johnny Herbert and I raced a lot in karts together. So we did the junior karts and we did the senior karts. He then got that opportunity to go to Quest with the Formula Ford deal, and did good in that, and then he had some good opportunities. And the same thing happened to me. I didn't have a good sponsor, but we had my dad had a business, and the business partner wanted to do something in racing because he was a bit of a fan, and we just had enough money to scrape through. But then there was me doing the mechanicking on it, and there was my dad doing the bits and pieces on it. So it was very like club level. It was then when you could do it, when if you didn't have a lot of money, you could still make it work. But also,
Yeah.
it was back in the day where if you did well, people recognized it. So I didn't have enough money to go and buy a senior Formula Ford drive, but I did well enough that Ralph turned around and gave me a test. I did well in the test. I was quicker than Irvine. It was the previous year, and it was then, and that was the same thing that happened with Johnny, because Johnny got the, he got the deal with Quest, then he got that Stelred deal with F3, then he got the Camel deal to go to Formula 3. So Johnny didn't have money to go and buy a drive, but he made it through doing well. And I had a little bit of a similar thing where I did enough to do well. Like the Benetton deal was a really weird deal. The one that went from, because that came along and I was offered 4 races, and it's like, okay, you've got 4 races and that's all you've got, and you have to do well in 4 races. And they cancelled one of the races because of some weather issue. And then I ended up winning what was the 5th race, and they said, okay, we'll give you another 4. So I went through that whole year being given a few more races and that's why I made a lot of mistakes that year. Even though I finished 3rd in the championship, I was always trying too hard. And that's the pressure of you don't have enough money or you don't have your own sponsor to be able to. I think that's the only thing that's sad now is now it's not about skill or talent, it's about money. And I do think that's a shame. And that back in my day, like even with Suspiri or Johnny, or there was a couple of others that made it on doing good results. We actually, if we won races, we got an opportunity or a free drive. So that was the difference that way. So that's the story of getting into Formula 4 and then the Formula 3 and then the Paul Stewart thing, which was I look back on that and maybe wonder if that wasn't a good decision or not.
Yeah, which I want to come to in a little bit. Because I do like to dig into this, because this was the kind of time where I was getting into motorsport myself, and that's where I remember you and many others. Just to go very quickly back, I asked this to everyone because it depends on which route they've gone down. Go from karting either down the single-seater route or into like the touring cars. These days it's like the Ginettas and the junior saloons and all that kind of thing. And there's always very different answers. I mean, how did you find the transition from the kart to the car? Because some people have said that it was just like a big go-kart with a bit of a difference, and some people said it was a pain in the butt. How did you find it?
I had a funny story. I remember I was doing a test at Brands on the Indy circuit, and one of the instructors there, one of the instructors came up to me and he's like, "You can't drive the way you're driving. You're too sideways. You're wild. You're all over the place." And I was like, "Okay." So he said, "We need to take you out in a road car." So he took me out in a road car, and he's pointing out all these like little markers on the track, and he's going, this marker and this marker, this is where you're supposed to turn in. And I said, that's all well and good. He said, but you're sitting in a road car, I can do that, but sitting in a racing car really low to the ground, I couldn't do it. But the issue I was having that was making me wild is from the go-karts you used to 2 pedals. I really struggled to get used to 3 pedals, so braking with my right foot was really odd. So I struggled. So every time I braked, I ended up always braking and using the clutch. And then because I wasn't, it was all this whole new way of driving. So then I'd go, I better release the clutch, and I'd release it too quickly, and the thing would snap sideways because I'd lock the rear wheels up with the. So I'm driving around, getting it all sideways, trying like driving like a go-kart. So that was the thing that took me the most to get used to. But the car, the thing with the car was, I actually preferred Formula Ford because it had no grip. So it was back to like driving in the wet. And that to me is if I was going to say one thing, I remember somebody saying this to me once. I started racing 10 years too late. If I'd have gone back when there was no grip and no downforce, I think I would have been better because I think I had more feel for when it had no grip. When you got to the point of where everyone had downforce, then it's not so much driver skill. It's more. Sometimes it's more how brave are you. Okay, you're going to do cops flat. because you've got the downforce to do it. Okay, I'll do it flat, but if it doesn't go off, you're going to be in the wall. But that's not skill. That's just, okay, how brave am I feeling? But Formula Ford,
Sure.
going back I think Formula Ford was probably the best school for motor racing, because it had no grip, a limited power, but the no grip was just brilliant. I mean, and the cars were just fun to drive.
And I mean, I always remember watching it when I was a kid, said in like the mid '80s, and the wheels seemed to stick out a hell of a long way. And I thought that's got to be kind of awkward, because if you got tangled up,
I mean, you
were
could
going.
tip someone up in the air really easily. It was one of the easiest things to do. You know, you could easily do that. But Formula Ford was, I think, where a lot of, I mean, you look at Senna. Senna came through the Formula Ford ranks. You know, he did 1600, then he did 2 litre. But I just think that's missing now, because I think go-karts now, there's too much grip. You know, they've just got way too much grip, and then they get into cars that have got too much grip. You know, the Formula 4 or whatever it is. I suppose that's where the sport's going, because it's all about downforce as they go up the ladder. But if you even look at now at Formula 1, the minute it rains, the guys that shine are the guys that know how to drive. And you know, that's, I mean, I love that. There's always that line: the rain is the best leveler. And it is, because it's the one time when the driver, I mean, you can look at Verstappen at Brazil. I mean, that was just a masterclass. I mean, you look at, you know, you look at that race and go, that's a guy who is driving the car, not the car driving him. And I think that's where I sort of struggle when it got to the higher downforce levels. But, you know, from the karts thing, it was just, I guess, I enjoyed the Formula Ford because it just slid around a lot. You know, it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, which is why you should go racing in the first place, isn't it? Have some fun. And so, I mean, I'm guessing, obviously, you said you had a few issues getting to grips with it and things like that, but it was good fun when you got the hang of it. You were on the was it the BARC Junior, wasn't it? Grid was the first grid I think that you got on.
Yeah, it was the Dunlop, Sarah tomorrow, and then the Townsend thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Which was BARC. I guess it's BARC and BRDC.
I guess it. BARC,
the British Automobile Racing Club, or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. And then there was and then the show. And I guess you didn't really have too many expectations going into it, but you basically won that junior class thing, blitzed the whole lot, beaten a certain young Scottish chap called McNish, which is nice.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. There's a funny story about McNish and a certain journalist that probably ruined I ruined my career through a comment I made to a certain journalist back in the day. So a guy called, I won't, maybe I shouldn't name names, but so there was a race at Snetterton, and I'd won a lot of the races in the Ray, but the Van Diemen was obviously a better car. So McNish was in the Van Diemen, or the '86 or the new Van Diemen, and we were at Snetterton, and it was a double header where it was the SO or the RAC race was on the same day, and then the junior race, and I finished second to McNish in the junior race, and then McNish goes and wins the senior race. Because he does it. And because Irvine went and crashed, Samoas went and crashed, somebody else went and crashed. Although they all crashed, and he ends up winning the race. And I'm thinking, of all the things that happened, and I bumped into this journalist, and this journalist says, "Oh God, McNish is such a superstar. He's going to go places." And I'm thinking, hold on, he only beat me by like half a second. What about me? What about me? And he's like, "Oh yeah, but you know, look at McNish. He won the senior race." I said, "But I wasn't in it." She said, "Yeah, but you didn't do it, did you?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I made a comment, and he ended up being the selector for the Marlborough drives. So he then put McNish in the Vauxhall Lotus the next year, and of course I never got the opportunity. So there was one of those things where sometimes it's better not to say something. No matter how angry you are, but I know it cost me, because I remember thinking to myself, that's probably not going to go down very well.
No, sure. But it's just one of those things, isn't it? One of those things.
It happens.
Yeah. But then you obviously won that junior thing, and you went onto the full grid, as it were. I actually had a quick look at this. Again, this is the time. This is where I first heard of all these names, like yourself and Alan and all the other guys. On the grid, this was for 88. There was like Gilles de Ferran
Yep.
was on there.
Adrian
You know,
Fernandez.
God bless him. Adrian Fernandez was there. Jordi and Janet was there. Vincenzo Sospiri was there. Pedro Chavez was there. Yeah, they're all good guys. I mean, strong grid.
It was a very strong. When you look at where they went afterwards, I mean, you got Suspiri, you got Cordova, you had. Gilles. Gilles was interesting because Gilles. I suppose that's a funny story. At the end of the year, Gilles he wasn't driving for Swift, was he? No, he drove for Reynard. He had oh no, he wasn't. He was in a Van Diemen that year in '88. He was in a Van Diemen because the following year he then went to drive for Reynard's.
It was Reynard.
No, it was.
He was at Reynard at some point.
Yeah, that year was good. I mean, we even had Polaris ended up coming in as well. I mean, he's completely. Polaris is just completely. He's still nuts. I actually went to the festival this year and bumped into him and did an interview. They had an evening chat. I mean, he's still as crazy as he was back then.
He's mad as a box of frogs.
God. I remember there was a race. There was the end of that year. We were having a real big issue between myself and Swift as the other manufacturer. So there was Richard Dean in the Swift, in the Tread Air Swift, the red Swift. But I got taken out. There was a race at Cadwell, and I got taken out in qualifying by this other guy driving a Swift. Like literally come up the mountain. I go to overtake him, and he just literally drives me off the track. And it's like, what is going on? So Ralph turns around to Nico and says, "Nico, you got to take Dean out." And it's like, okay, I'm not involved. I'm not involved in this. And he says, okay. We only get 200 yards off the start, and he's on top of him. And that was Nico. It's like, told Nico to do something. It's like, Nico, seriously? Could you have done it any more? I mean, he just didn't. I've been told to do something. I'll do it. I think that's why everybody loved him. I think that's why everybody loved him. But
nothing subtle about it.
I just remember thinking, oh my God, really? But it was actually, there was times when there was another race that year after this Cadwell incident where I went to Silverstone and I qualified in a car that wasn't Duckham's coloured. I was wearing a different crash helmet. And as I'm driving out to the grid, Frank Bradley sees me and recognises it's and then Dave Coyne goes out and he waits for me on the track because he's going to take me out in qualifying. Like literally, we both come through Beckett's and it's like, okay, we both start slowing down, come to a stop because he just wants to make sure he takes me out in qualifying. I mean, it was manic, and then this is Formula Ford. You know, you're thinking it's not even Grand Prix racing. This is Formula Ford, and I ended up I started way at the back, and I think Dean got taken out by Coyne in the race through a mistake. But there was some crazy stuff going on that year. I mean, just crazy stuff. You wouldn't think about it. It's just Formula Ford, but
this is all the stuff that grandstand.
I just remember when the car was not painted. So the car's not painted, and I'm driving out thinking, okay, hopefully I can sneak out and no one will see me, but somebody saw me. But no, we had an entertaining end of the year for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. And you mentioned about the Duckham's thing. I've also said a Duckham's Van Diemen. That's the
iconic drive to have.
That's the emblem of my kind of childhood of the F1 feeder ladder.
I mean, it was the best drive to have. They were a great company, great people. Driving for Ralph was brilliant. Driving for Ralph and John Upperchard and all the other guys there. I remember when I'd signed the deal, they had me testing on the 2nd of January at Snetterton. And it was like, and I remember doing about 5 laps and coming in and couldn't feel my hands. And I'm thinking, what are we doing this for? But boy, could he make a car go. They always had a car at the end of the year that was the prototype car for the following year. My God, that thing was always so quick. I remember testing at Snetterton this car for the following year. So it was the '89 car, and I'd never gone round Snetterton at like 1:09 with the old track was a really good lap, and I did an 8:5,
Right.
and I'm like, what the heck is going on with this thing? It's the big engine in it, you go. Oh. But no, that year was that year. I don't. Oh God, I must have gone to Snetterton probably 60 or 70 times that year.
Right.
I remember going
Just
1 week before the race. There 1 week, I went on the Monday and tested on the Monday, and we had a valve train issue or a rocker issue. So I came home, and then they said, "Oh, we fixed it. We'll come back on Tuesday." And I was like, "Okay." I did the test on Tuesday. We had the same problem. I ended up going there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and finally on Thursday I turned around and said, "Ralph, can I just stay the night somewhere? Because this is just crazy. Because I'm just driving backwards and forwards." I was driving backwards and forwards because I thought we were done, but we were having a push rod issue, kept bending push rods.
Right.
So that was an issue, but it felt like Formula One. You were doing more testing than we were just testing all the time because you could back then.
Testing because you could, yeah. Whereabouts were you based?
I lived in
then?
Windsor.
Are you based where
I lived
Windsor?
in Old Windsor, so it was a 2-hour drive up to Snetterton every day.
Yeah, because you won't know. So Windsor is about 25 minutes down the M4 that way for me.
Right.
So I'm in Reading.
Okay.
I'm just at
Yeah.
Junction
Okay.
12.
Yeah, no, I know Reading well.
So I know how far. It's not the easiest drive.
No, but it's funny. It seems like it was an easier drive back then. I don't. You'd go around. I can't even remember how I'd get there now. I was up the A1, A11. Up the A11.
Yep.
You go around the M25 up to the A11.
Yeah. Blimey. But it was great. Great. You were able to go and get the testing in, even if it was a bit of a pest going backwards and forwards. And obviously, it was a great team to be with, as you say.
Puddy was the mechanic, so I had the man that was the Van Diemen mechanic as well.
So
the proper, it was they did it right. The fact that there was a race where I qualified at Castlecombe, got in a plane, flew to Silverstone, qualified at Silverstone, then flew back, then did the qualified and raced at Silverstone, then got in the plane, in Ralph's plane, and flew back to Castlecombe. Then there was another race later in the year where I qualified at Brands on the Saturday, drove up to Alton Park on the Sunday, started at the back of the grid, and then flew out of Alton Park back to Brands to do the race. And that was the race that Johnny had his big accident in the 3000.
88
yeah, it was that weekend when he broke both his legs.
Wow.
So there was, they just did it properly. It was, this is how we're going to win this championship, and we're going to make sure you do things right. And you felt like, at that time, I felt like, my God, I'm a proper racing driver. I'm getting in a plane, I'm getting in I'm doing all of this sort of racing and stuff.
Wow.
Good life. That was a good life. They were good times.
Yeah. Just think, guys, did you ever get in any helicopters at that time?
No. I did the Jonathan Palmer one the next year.
Okay, because I'm just thinking, I had Jerry Marney came on, the touring car driver, and he's got some stories about flying helicopters. I was just wondering if you got caught up in
one helicopter thing was Jonathan Palmer when he ran the Cellnet deal. Because I won the Cellnet thing, the end of the 87 season, the star or whatever it was, and I got the Cellnet thing, and then Jonathan Palmer had where we go all around and do driving schools, and there was a competition that somebody won at the end of it that way. So, but racing seemed so much more. I don't know, just seemed more fun. Less. There seemed to be less stuff.
Less sort of corporate noise and all.
There was some corporate, but it wasn't to the point where you couldn't go to the paddock. A Formula One race, you could actually get in. It wasn't locked down as much as it is now.
We're saying about 87, 88 here, aren't we? And that was the first time I ever went to the British Grand Prix. I went qualifying in 88 when the Ferrari stuck it on pole. And I've said this so many times, I'm probably repeating myself on here as well. But I remember my dad took me and my older brother. I was 7. My brother was 10, just coming up for 10. And we got there, we bought, and because we just turned up, didn't have tickets, turned up, paid on the gate, bought 3 grandstand seats, just woodcut just after the chicane, as they run a little kink in the pit lane. Bought a hat and a mug and a fridge magnet and 2 sets of ear defenders, and we did the pit lane walkabout. So we went into the pits, F1 pit lane, walked up and down, and there was just like a bit of like rope you get at the bank.
Yeah, I mean,
it was like one of those little stretchy cords. And my dad found a payphone, phoned my mum, and he was complaining that he'd spent 75 quid and hadn't seen a car yet.
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, no, 75 quid in 1988 was about 200 quid.
Exactly,
but still, you can't get near silver over 200 quid now, can you?
I mean, that's the one thing you talked about it, IndyCar. That's the one thing that IndyCar does so well. The fact that the people can go and walk around the paddock for no extra cost at any race, even at Indy, you can go and buy
even at the 500,
you can go and buy a ticket and walk around the garages, and it is the availability of the drivers for the spectators is something that Formula One is missing really badly.
Needs to somehow
they need to get them where they're not complaining about, oh my god, I've got an autograph session for half an hour, oh, what am I going to do? The only reason you're in the sport is because the fans are paying for you to be in the sport. That was something I always thought was really good about America, that they do that much better.
Oh, they really do. I mean, a quick story. I had Ari Lyons on here, as I said, and we met up with him at the in the pagoda area at the IMS, and he was there with his cap and his shades on, being all incognito, and I kind of sodded up to him and went, Ari, how you doing? And whatever. He took us in, waving his lanyard, saying, these guys are from England and they're with me. Took us in through the kitchen and in through the back of the garage, and basically just pushed people out of the way and said, look, fans coming through, stuff your TV interviews. Went into VK's garage and took us in there, took us around the car. And so there's no way that would happen at F1.
No, but that is why I think we talked about it earlier, didn't we? That IndyCar needs to get more attention. They need to find a way to make it where people over here get an understanding for how good it is and how fun it is to go to a race. Any racetrack you go to in America, to go and watch an IndyCar race, you would not believe the accessibility you get. I mean, you wander around the trucks, they're out the back, they're in the awnings. It's still basically Formula One back in the 70s, 80s. When they ran out of the awnings still, where they didn't always have, I mean, I go back to when I was growing up, I remember going to Formula One races in 76. In the 70s or 80s, and it was still very basic. They were still running out of the trucks. Not like it is now.
Not like where you can't get near the thing. That's what motorsport should be, isn't it? It should be fun. It should be fun. Speaking of fun and events and stuff, one thing I want to touch on before we hop on to F3. Formula Ford Festival. I used to love it as a kid. I used to absolutely love it. Apart from when the Formula One was on, Formula Ford Festival.
Best race of the year.
Stick it on record, on grandstand. Leave me alone. I'm watching this.
Best motor race, I think, ever.
Yeah. I mean, because obviously it was a big deal, wasn't it? It was a huge deal at that time. It was a springboard into F3, F3000, and F1. You were in it in, was it 88?
87 and 88.
I think was and you took, was it third in 88?
I took third in 88. I led it. I got bike-called over and led it for quite some time, and then there was and Suspirig overtook me on the last lap. And then there was a yellow flag, which I should have finished second, but overtook me. So there was a bit of a bone of contention, but it didn't really matter because I was already upset with the fact that I didn't lead it. I'd over revved an engine and I'd bent a push rod, and that's what caused me to do it. But that race, 190 entries. I mean, it was proper.
And there's all the heats.
I mean, it was heats. You did your qualifying on Saturday, then you had a heat, and then you did a quarter, semi, and a final. But that was the year in 88. Do you remember the story of the lights?
What, like the start lights? I remember something about it. I don't know the whole.
Cordova and I are sitting on the front row, and the sun's shining, and he goes, and I'm like, oh. So I went, and I remember getting into paddock and thinking, oh, this is bad. We're the only two that have left the grid. Where's everybody?
Oh, yes.
Where's everybody
I
else?
do remember
And then
seeing it.
so
Yeah,
we
yeah.
drove around and drove back to the front of the
Yeah.
grid. And I remember just arguing and saying, look, I couldn't see the lights. I don't know what happened. And the only way we got away with it is because the race had never started. Because the green never came on. If the green had come on, we would have jumped the start. But because it never actually, the green never came on, they just turned the red on. So he went when he saw it go from nothing to red. I just went because I went, well, he's gone, so I better go.
I'll go as well. Yeah.
What? And then it got started with a flag. It's like it went back to the old traditional, like standing there and the guy on the gantry waving a flag. So that was quite a classic to that part of the festival. But
fantastic,
yeah,
amazing. It's but it was a fantastic event. I mean, you know, I always look at things through rose-tinted specs, I think, but it was always fantastic. I mean,
what a crowd! I mean, it was packed. It was always packed. The festival Sunday,
I think I went
it was
once.
packed. It was like a proper, you know, and I think that's it's. I mean, I went this year and it's not as busy. It's not the same. It's not the same event as it used to be because I think Formula Ford's been sort of spoiled, or it's changed too much, hasn't it? You know, the Kent engine 1600 Formula Fords are not going to be the thing anymore, and there's too many other forms of racing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I remember seeing it was Formula Ford, F3, F3000, F1.
I mean, but you had, I suppose you had didn't you have? There was one other one that you had just before. It was the Formula First.
I was going to say, was it Formula First? They had the weird square back to them,
they were the big boxy angular. Yeah,
with the big.
Yeah, I remember driving the first one of those as testing it for Ralph, and it was like, well, this is fun. You know, it drives around and does it. Because you had Formula Ford 1600, then you had 2 litre. Yeah, and then you had F3, but that was it. So there was less classes. Now it just seems as though there's way too many classes.
There's all the Formula Regionals around the world, isn't there? And the Formula 4 and 3, and then the GB3, GB4, F3.
I've got confused. I don't understand any of the GB3, 4, and I mean, when it was just F3, it was great, but now it's, you know, and now you've got F3, but then you've got FIA F3, which is different again because that's an even different car again, isn't it?
Yes, it's not the Tatus, is it?
It's a Dallara. It's a Dallara, but it's a different engine. It's a V6 and stuff like that. I just think they've dissolved it too much. You've got too much to try and fit in where you used to just have a basic, okay, this is your ladder.
Yes, which is what they've still got out in the States, which we'll obviously come to. But I absolutely agree on that. But you mentioned about F3. Now, you went into F3 in 1989 with a chap that some people may have heard of, Dick Bennett. Dick's been on. He actually, when I put about this on my personal Facebook page, he actually hit like on it. So, Dick, if you're tuning in, hello. Very good to see you, Dick. If you are tuning in, still very much going strong. Dick Bennett, West Surrey Racing.
Rolly Vincini, my engineer.
Rolly, everything.
Yeah, he was my engineer.
Fantastic. I mean, how did it all come about? I mean, obviously, because you'd done well in Formula Ford, you'd won the juniors, you'd come pretty high in the championship, and you all the way up, and you'd done well in the festival and everything. How did it come about that you ended up at
somehow
West Surrey?
My dad knew a guy called Gordon Message who worked at Benetton. And somehow started a conversation, and it came along. And then there was another lady involved called Diane Gilpin. And somehow this conversation started happening between Uniden, who was the sponsor, and they were talking about wanting to come into it with Benetton and do some deal. So all of a sudden, this opportunity came up that they were going to do this F3 team with Dick. And it was going to be a Benetton coloured car, and it was going to be with Uniden sponsoring it. And I just kept talking to Gordon, and then I kept talking to Di, and somehow I ended up being the guy that got the opportunity to do the first 4. I got 4 races.
Right.
Didn't get a lot of testing because it got done very late. remember doing that. I finished the first race like 6th or something at Thruxton. And then I think we went to Donington, and Donington got either Donington or Silverstone got called off. Then my third race, I hit Steve Robertson, stalled on the grid, and I hit him from 5th. One of those classic deals of like, oh shit, he stalled and I hit him. You know, one of those deals.
Yeah.
And I think there was one other. And then I won the 5th race, and that was like, oh, okay, we'll give you another 4. And so I did another 4. And then they did put a South African driver in to test at Snetterton, but he didn't do very. Oh, I can't remember his name now. But they had a couple of other drivers drive throughout the year. But I just got the 4 races. So it was me and McNeish who, you know, we rekindled our love for each other. As I was talking to you about this. I remember a story. We were at Alton Park, and he comes in and he goes, "I made it! I made it!" I'm like, "What?" He said, "I weighed 49 kilos this morning," and I'm like, and I was doing everything. I was not eating. I was doing everything to get to 70 kilos because I'm quite. And I was like, "Okay, I give up. 21 kilos is just ridiculous. How? I mean, that's a leg. It's 2 legs.
You got to chop a limb off."
But I mean, we had some moments. We had some interesting times together. I mean, Alan, you got to give him credit. He did really well at Le Mans. I mean, he did an amazing job at Le Mans. He did he did very well. I mean, he got to F1. He did all the bits and pieces. I mean, he certainly did well. I just wondered that I think he didn't get. I was a bit disappointed that he didn't get some of the breaks in F1 that he maybe should have got. Like Toyota was.
Yeah.
It's the same as there's a guy I really rated and I didn't think he got a fair shake at it. Was Cristiano D'Amato.
Yeah, I mean, he did very well.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I finished when I was in. He was in Indy Lights the first year I did Indy Lights when he won the championship. But he was a star driver, and somehow in the Toyota thing, he just didn't get that opportunity. But
yeah, it was an opportunity, but perhaps the wrong place,
wrong time, wrong
team.
Place. Same as look at Bourdais.
Well,
Bourdais was another.
Bourdais,
Bourdais wins 4 championships in a row in IndyCar, and then goes to Formula One, and it doesn't work for some reason, you know.
Yeah, and then he goes and wins like at Le Mans, and he goes and does all these other, you know. So he's very capable driver, as we know.
Very capable, yeah.
Very, very
good.
No,
so F3 was that first year of F3 was challenging because never knowing that I was never knowing that I had the seat for the year, I overdrove. I made some silly mistakes. You know, I remember there was a race at Alton Park where qualified 3rd behind Brabham. Should have just gone through the first corner, stayed 3rd, but didn't. Tried to get into 2nd and hit Otto Rensing, damaged front wheel. There were silly mistakes that I made just under the pressure of, I better make the most of this.
I guess through not having the security of the full season.
Not having the security of the drive for the year was very difficult. But there were some really good races. You know, I mean, I won the race at Silverstone, and there was a really good race at the end of the last race of the year at Thruxton, where I got knocked off on the first corner by David Brabham, or at the complex, but managed to come back through the field pretty much all the way back. And there were some good races like that were like, okay, this is good, you know.
Yeah. It kind of had its moments, didn't it?
I mean, it was a good season. I mean, you had you had Brabham, Robertson, Philippe Adams.
I've got a big old list. I've got a little list. I've just turned my
notes over. I've
got Brabham, Rydell, Philippe Adams, who I spoke to recently, actually. Need to get back in contact with him. Certain Finnish guys called Hakkinen and Salo were around at that time.
Hakkinen and Salo, yeah.
I wonder whatever became of them two.
I tell you what, they were just amazing. Yeah,
good. Yeah. I mean, I've had Mika on here, and I'm still in contact with Mika, which is amazing as a motorsport fan to say that. But he is one of those guys, just so he's Finnish, isn't he? He's just matter of fact. He's
there is something different about them. There's something different. I mean, I remember with Hakkinen and Salo, there was something different about them. Things didn't phase them the way that it did other people, and they just had this car control as well that was special. They were very talented. I mean, they both did very well. I mean, both the Mikas did really well. You know, one was world champion, but no, there was some good quality drivers there. in that period of time.
Yeah. I'm just saying about Mika. I spoke to him, and I spoke to him about the whole Ferrari thing when he stepped in with Schumacher. And people were saying, "Oh, it was scandalous that he had to give up the position for Irvine. He should have won a Grand Prix." Blah blah blah. Mika's was just like, "Well, they told me that was the situation, so whatever."
Yeah,
I'd be raging if that was me. He was just like,
well, no,
"Well,
but you know what? There's been a lot of drivers, and Irvine, Barrichello, all have had really good careers out of being number 2 to Schumacher, and they made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they're very
Like Rubens
comfortable.
has done
And
very
you know what?
nicely.
If somebody turns around to you and says, "Would you like to drive for Ferrari, but you're number 2?" You'd say, "Yes, please." Where do I sign? Where do I sign?
I mean, number 2 at Ferrari is better than number 1 at most other places, isn't it?
But why? I mean, I don't understand it. I mean, I always think there was one other thing that I always struggled with Schumacher and the people that were his teammate. We can't drive his car. Why not? It's just a car. It's an inanimate object.
Yeah.
I'm a great believer in if you were given a car and let's say it does a lap time, and that car does a lap time with that driver. If you can't match that lap time, it's not the car, it's you. You've got the data, you've got everything. It's just the fact that you need to learn to drive better. If you're given the same setup, learn to drive it. And it's a great, and that's something that I find very frustrating when people say, "Oh, but the car's not set up the same. I need it set up to me." Yeah, but if you're a second a lap slower than the other guy, you're just justifying yourself because the car setups are different. You should have. It's just something that with Michael was a talent, and I mean he was the star model of making a team around himself. I mean, and then Vettel copied it. I mean, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because if you look at the transition, so you have the PK, Mansell, Senna period. So after that, you then had Michael. So Michael went, okay, I want to be a little bit of Prost, and I want to be a little bit of Senna, but I don't want to be all of them. But I want to take the best, cherry pick the best. And then Vettel came along and went, I want to be Michael, but I also want to be a little bit of Prost because I want to be smart. And that's what the transition has been.
Yeah, they're just like morphing together.
I mean, just watching the guys and picking out the best qualities.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, I love it. I love all these little insights.
Yeah,
it's obviously it was a very good grid, and going back to the grid we had in '89. I want to touch on something, the Macau Grand Prix. I love talking about Macau Grand Prix because I've spoken to so many people that have done it. I mean, like, I spoke with Tom Coronel. He absolutely loved it. I spoke with Peter Dunbreck did it. A few other guys, Marco Apicella, I've spoken to about it. And they've all said it's fabulous. I mean, obviously, it's kind of lost a little bit of what it has now, but they just said it's ridiculous. It shouldn't be a street circuit. You can't go that far. You said you can't go that fast on a street circuit. Street circuits shouldn't have hills like that. They just said it's the most gloriously bonkers event. And if they came up with it now, people would go, no.
For me, the thing that I remember, when I got there the first time, you drive around it, you go, you've got to be kidding me. This is. I mean, because the straight's way too long.
And then into Lisboa,
and then you go up this tight hill, and then you go down this hill, and you bounce around, and you do all these bits and pieces. But the best bit about it is then you get the motorcycles, and they go and ride around it, and you go, oh, you're nuts. I mean, I'm bad enough driving around in a car, but these guys are driving around. I mean, when we were there, they had mini mokes. And that's what we learned to drive. That's what they would seem like they were abandoned everywhere. You just would get in one and drive it around. I mean, it was, I wish I'd have done a better job there. I know I crashed in qualifying, and that put me back. And then I had a fifth gear break in the first race, and that put me back a little bit. But it was a hell of an event. And then I went back there the next year when I worked with Docking. Went there and did that. But definitely a fun event to go to. Really, really good fun, and Hong Kong's fun as well, and Macau is fun. So it's. I wish I'd have done better there. That was a race I would have liked to have done, because then I remember the following year I was almost going to do it again when they had the Fuji part. because then they did Macau
yeah.
Fuji as the double header. But
Yes.
I was racing in Japan at the time, but I couldn't do the Macau. I couldn't get a deal for the Macau race together.
Okay. Fair enough. But no, it's on my bucket list for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Just going to something I wanted to touch on. We touched on it before. Gone from West Surrey to Paul Stewart racing, and you said it perhaps wasn't. Yeah, in hindsight, it wasn't the move that
Never
you might
drive
have
for the
made.
son. Never drive for the son of the team owner.
Right.
I'll leave it at that. That's one of
see.
those deals. It was a shame because there was driving with Jack or spending time with Jackie is one of the best experiences you can have in your life.
I'm sure it's an absolute
I mean,
joy.
the guy is his knowledge, his personality. He is just, he's a 3-time world champion for a reason. And they're a great family, and it's a tragedy what's happening with his wife and with Helen. I feel that as well because my dad had dementia and my dad passed from that, so I have a sort of sympathy with him on that part. But no, Jackie was a great guy, and it was a great team. Just starting with the Reynard that year, that was awful. The car was really bad, and then we changed to Rolts. But it was a late change, and there were just things that happened throughout the year that were very, very frustrating. Yeah, and it just. I think it was almost like you're there as a lamb of like, okay, we can make Paul look good by making the other person not look so good. It helps Paul, which is fine, and I should have realized that. But it was such an opportunity. You go from being given 4 races to all of a sudden having a whole season with camelbacking and everything like that. You're like, whoa, this is great,
Yeah.
And that was so funny because at that time I still smoked. And I remember when I started at Stewart's, they said, you've got to stop smoking. And I went, but surely I'm the proper advert. I'm, smoking Camel cigarettes.
Camel.
And they said, oh, no, it's not a good image. I was like, okay.
It's literally the image.
But it was the weirdest thing. It was like, okay, this is just really, really strange. But no, there was some engineering issues that I worked with an engineer that I didn't connect with very well, and that didn't help. And you look back on the year and you go, okay, that was probably a mistake, but it was an opportunity. So that I mean, there was some good races. When I finally got in the Rolt, there was better races, but then it just didn't gel, and I got a bit sort of. I actually almost thought that was going to be my last time of racing at that time.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
because I didn't see myself getting an opportunity afterwards because it was so bad, and the results were so bad that I thought, well, nobody's going to have an. And it did take me another year to get an opportunity, and that's down to Roland Ratzenberger of all people.
Well, I was going to say, because I noticed that he kind of like cropped up in the next kind of phase. It was 92, wasn't it? You went out to Japan.
He was the reason he got me. Roland in 91 was really good friends with Alan Docking because he'd run with Alan Docking, and I worked with Alan as sort of the driver coach for Marcel Albers. So that's where I got involved halfway through the year with Marcel, and
because it was Marcel that was
he was the one, so I ended up helping Marcel, and there was Hideki Noda was in the team as well, but Marcel was a star. He was going to be a really good driver, and we got Alan and I got on top of him, got him to stop throwing his elbows out of the car and being over aggressive, and he was doing very well. And then he went, well, you did go and win a race the next year, and then got killed at Thruxton. But Alan and Roland were good friends, and Roland was like, oh, I've got this guy. I can get you in touch with Toyota, and I can get you in touch with this other guy, to get you to come out and do a test. So I flew out and did a test with Toyota at their test track, and there was me, Cordova, Tom Christensen, and one other guy. So we did this test. I ended up actually being the quickest in the Toyota test. Then I went and did another test in Suzuka with another team, but it was a single car team, and I was second quickest in that test to Anthony Reid. Back. This is back in the time, and here's probably the biggest mistake I've made in my racing career. Then, so I got offered the opportunity to drive for Toyota with the Toms team. So it would have been myself, Christensen, Jacques Villeneuve, and that would have been it. So I would have been the fourth of that. So, but my dad at that time was like, "Oh no, you don't want to drive for a 4-car team. You'll just be one of 4. You want to go to the 1-car team because you'll get better attention." And hindsight is 2020, but I should have just done.
That's good in theory.
Yeah,
of
but
course,
I should have gone with the Toyota thing. I would have been. I don't know where I could have had the opportunity, but I could have driven the Tom chassis, or they ended up going to Rolts because they were going to run the Tom chassis, but then they couldn't build enough of them, and then they put Christensen in a Rolt, and he did really well. But that was quite a learning. I mean, I had a good year there, but it was just one of those decisions you look back on and you go, maybe I shouldn't have listened to my dad. Maybe I should have gone with. My gut was like, I want to drive for Toyota because it's Toyota. And my dad was like, no. But, such is life.
Yeah. I just say hindsight's 2020. And
especially in racing. You can go back on many decisions in racing and say that. So, but then after that, I came back and then worked for Docking again as a team manager. So I did the team manager role when we did, we had 4 cars. So we had Ricardo Rosset. Oh God, Brian Cunningham.
Okay.
Then we ran a guy that was in that owned. My God, my memory's bad of the people that were back then. Who was the other class? Because you had Class A and Class B then, and I can't remember. So it was Rosset and wasn't Hideki again? Was it? No.
I think it's been around then.
Oh, that's a good one. That one's really baffled me. But I know Ricardo was quite. That was funny. He was quite good in F3, but then God, he was useless in F1.
Didn't work out, did it? I mean, I'm obviously in absolutely no position to criticise anyone in F1,
Clark,
but
that was awful.
It was. Sometimes people come along in F1, and even as a fan, you think, huh?
Yeah. I mean,
but you thought, well, he can't be that bad because he wouldn't have got there in the first place.
I just didn't get it. I didn't get it with him. I know we ran. I mean, and that year we also ran Villeneuve. We ran Villeneuve at Macau. That was quite entertaining. He's quite a character. He was out there, Jack.
Who was it I spoke with 2 or 3 weeks ago? Or was it a few weeks ago? I can't remember who it was. I can't remember. I was talking to someone, and they said that growing up, their hero was Gilles Villeneuve. Right. And then when they were later on, was it Robert Dornbos? I can't remember. Anyway, sorry, Robert, if it wasn't you. Sorry, but he said, and then later on, it was Ukyo Katayama recently. He said, when I was a kid, I used to love watching Gilles Villeneuve. And then I ended up kind of racing alongside with Honda and stuff alongside Jack, and Ukyo just went, yeah. That was his reaction to Jack. But some people love him, and some people can't.
I mean, I spent some time with him in Japan, but there were things about him that he was just disconnected. He could just disconnect from things. Right. He was very strange. But I mean, great driver. I mean, there were times when he could do things, and you go, okay, how do you win the F1 championship? You go to IndyCar, you win the 500 from 2 laps down.
It was like the Indy 505, wasn't it?
2 laps down, and you win the Indy 500 in your first attempt. I mean, okay, they had the best car, but no. But no, that was an interesting. No, so that was a fun year. That year of working for Doc was fun, and then my dad was engineering out in Mexico. He was running the Montana team that was Gilberto Jimenez and Rod McLeod. Okay. So he was there, and then he came up with this. There was an opportunity for me to go out and drive. So I just got married that year, and me and my wife decided to fly out to Mexico with all our suitcases, all our life, leave England, like just we're done, let's go to Mexico, and arrived, and there was nothing there. the team that was supposed to happen didn't happen. So we were like about
that's a minor
hiccup, big hiccup. So we went round trying to find things, and ironically, I took a day trip to go and look at some pyramids with somebody took us out to do a day trip to go to some pyramids, and we stopped at this place in Puebla which had a race team called Prometeo, which was a small Formula 3 team out there, and walked in, just said, "Oh, how things going?" And there was a guy there that was Steve Miller, was the engineer. And I said, "Oh, you got any options?" He said, "Oh no, we've just signed Kenny Brack." So it was going to be Kenny Brack and Osvaldo Negri.
Oh yeah.
So anyhow, I go back home and I'm thinking, we're just doing around. I get a phone call on Monday, and Kenny Brack had decided to go and do 3,000 in Europe. So there was a seat available. So I ended up getting Kenny Brack's seat. What would have been Kenny Brack's seat. That's how I got my opportunity to race. So I lived in Puebla and got the opportunity to finish. I finished second to Carlos Guerrero. So he was the Urdez guy. That he went to Indy. Guerrero, he was like this, after the whole whoever. There was another guy that went there first, or one of the Mexicans that got up. Not Hector Ribac, because it might have been Hector. Is Hector Ribac Mexican? But there was a couple that had gone there before.
There was
Jose
Garza. Garza was the one,
Jose Garza. Yeah.
I don't know where I pulled that name from, by the way.
Because I raced against him in Formula 3000 in Mexico. Because he was still doing that. But then that's how the Mexico thing came up. So the Prometeo thing went well that year. Then I got signed by the team that had won the championship with Guerrero. And he'd got to IndyCar. It was all relative to him to go to IndyCar. And then I started the thing with Team Go and Quaker State. And that's where everything just went. It was like it couldn't go wrong for a period of time. It was just brilliant.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, just from looking at it, I mean, I was aware that you'd been out in Mexico and you'd done well in the championship. I didn't know it went as well as it did. Because firstly, what I like to do about these racing drivers, you guys, you always travel over the world, live in different places, stuff like that. Obviously, you were done with England anyway, and you'd gone out to Mexico. Was it a bit of a, because I've asked this to like Peter Dunbrack and Salo and all the guys who have gone out to Japan, and they just love it. Everything out there was fantastic. I spoke with Alan Berg, and he said he loved Mexico. I spoke with Tommy Byrne. He said, I didn't like it because I almost got shot by the team manager.
Well, Tommy.
How was your experience when you first got to Mexico? Because it's a very, very different place, isn't it?
Okay, so the first we arrived in Mexico, arrived at the airport in Mexico City, got all the briefcases, all the suitcases, and everything like that. Got all my money, all my passports. Go through customs, go through the checkout, get the bags. I end up leaving my briefcase behind in the customs thing. That's got all my money and the passports in it. So my first experiences of like trying to get back in to get my briefcase. I get in to get it, and they're like, "You need to tell everyone how honest we are. We Mexicans are very honest." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So No, but my first experience, I was just married then. My first experience was we went out the next day to a place called Cuernavaca, which is about an hour outside of Mexico City. Honestly, it seemed like it was California. Absolutely gorgeous, wonderful place. And go back into Mexico City that night, living on a main street in Mexico City, like main street in Mexico City. It's called Insurgentes. I think it's about 400 miles long. It's one of the main streets in Mexico. Lived in this apartment. My God, the traffic and the noise and the hustle. And you're like, but the weekends, every weekend, everyone disappears. Turns into a quiet. You're like, how do all these people disappear? I honestly say that Mexico was the best place I've lived. Better than America, it was the most fun. The people are amazing. The food's amazing. The weather's amazing. It just was a really fun place to be. I actually regret not, when I got the opportunity to go to the States, I regret not having kept more of a connection back in Mexico to maybe have come back to be able to have gone and raced back in Mexico when I stopped racing in Indy, when I stopped racing in America, because I could have probably come back to Mexico and still race. Because I could have, I think my daughter was born there. So that made a lot of difference, and that was a nice thing as well. And I learnt the language and made an attempt to do it. So it was fun. It was a good 4 year. Oh, it was 4 years. So it was a good 4 years, a lot of fun. And and then the Quaker people were really good because I did well for them. They then said, "Oh well, we want to go to Indy Lights," and so it was a Mexican team going to Indy Lights, but we want to take you because you've got experience and you've done a good job for us, and that was the opportunity that got me to Indy Lights.
Nice. Yeah, so it's nice that kept it in the
I
family.
mean, but,
so to
but then you also knew in the back of your mind, well, I'm only going to be here for 2 years because they're going to want a Mexican. So you knew that was coming. And that only took till the second year. And then the second year, it was like, oh, we're going to fire you. Okay, whatever.
Have you?
Yeah,
Great.
The second.
Of course you have.
The second year in Indy Lights was quite entertaining. The first year was good. The second year was much more entertaining.
Yeah. I just want to touch on that in a moment. I mean, what I like though is obviously gone to F3, team go, Quaker State, and all that kind of thing. I was wondering what were the cars like, the F3 cars out there compared to what they had? I mean,
they were 2-year-old Reynolds. No, 993s. Right. So they were a year-old Reynolds. So they weren't current. They weren't Delaras. So they were all the same. You had Alfa Romeo engines or Volkswagen engines. There was no other. No, that was it. There was the Volkswagen or the Alfa. I mean, they were just Formula 3 cars. Just basic Formula 3 cars. Everyone had the tyres were interesting because they started off with Goodyear cross-ply tyres, which was really quite interesting because that's a whole different world. And then they ended up getting onto Avon, so they ended up being on the same tyres as British F3 at that time. And then they brought the 3000. When they brought the 3000 car over, they did bring a Reynard over, and I demoed it at one of the races at the end of the year when I won the championship. And then they ended up doing the Lola 3000 car. It was the first sort of sequential. Oh no, the Reynard was a sequential, but it was the latest Lola version. But they didn't have the DFV or whatever, the DFY or whatever engine. They put a Chrysler engine in it, which was something they put in because that's what they had. Because it was there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's all good because obviously we don't sort of see much of those cars over here, so it's good that it was was pretty similar really to what you've been doing before. What I'd like to ask is about the race tracks, because obviously race tracks they vary from continents, and people say the ones in Japan are so different to the ones in Europe. Europe's different to the UK, things like that. And then we know about the American ones. The Mexican ones, I've had a quick look at them. I mean, obviously, we've got the one that used to the Grand Prix, the Hermanos Rodriguez, and you went to that Tangamanga and Monterrey and the Zacatecas and Guadalajara. I mean, they all look like a lot of fun.
Yeah, Mexico City, when it was before it been modified, when it was the old, like the original Grand Prix track.
Yeah, with the old Peraltada
the S's there were unbelievable.
Because I mean, it sort of looks like the maggots.
Oh yeah, but it carries on and on. I mean, you go.
There's about 9 of them.
You go left, right, left, right, left, right. But the best thing about it is, if you got it right, it was flat. From the time you turned left the first time, you could get through flat all the way to the Peraltada. And then the Peraltada on a good day was just a brake and back on in fifth in an F3 car. I rolled it there once because I tried to do it flat and it didn't work. And it's like this time,
right?
Oh shit, this isn't going to work. And I ended up. I didn't remember the center shunt there. Remember where center rolled?
Yeah, he went into it and flipped.
I did exactly the same thing. I went in, hit the tires, and rolled. And it's like I was on pole. It was like, and the guy's like, "Why did you do this?" I'm like, "It's because it's fun. You got to try." But no, there was a one track that I won at. I think I won every race but one, and that was a place called San Luis Potosi, which is Tangamanga, and it was like in a park. And it was the best thing about it is it would start off so dusty and slippery that you had no grip. So it was just like driving in the wet all the time. So it was really good. Zacatecas was a good track. Guadalajara was a bit Mickey Mouse. They had another one. Oh, I'm trying to think where else we went to. We went to one in
There's one in Monterey.
Monterey
wasn't there,
was a drag strip. That was quite entertaining. So if it rained,
Fun.
the drag strip was you couldn't drive because the straight was covered in the weird rubber. And same with Mexico City. Mexico City was a drag strip. So if it rained there, we couldn't drive because you couldn't come up to the main straight because you had no grip because they'd had all the drag strip rubber go down.
The rubber,
And Monterey was a good one. There was another one at what's the town? There's a town. God, I got my memories I've got to get my memory back on these sort of things. Saltillo was another track that was quite good. That was not bad. There was one out in Acapulco. No, not Acapulco. What's the other one on the? There was one in Cancun, but they didn't. Oh, there was one in Puebla. That was quite interesting. I mean, there were some good tracks. They were definitely. What we always used to say is they always had one long straight.
Right, they love the blast.
Yeah, no, that was for the planes.
Right.
That was, and it was so funny because that's all they were for the drugs.
Right.
That was just so they could land the drugs, so they wouldn't have to land them on the other airfields. And it was like common knowledge that that's why they always had a long straight.
Things that you don't get in Cheshire or Alton
Park or Cadwell or anything like that. But it's funny you talk about Japan. Japan probably has the best racetracks, I would say, in the world.
Peter Dumbreck.
There's a racetrack called Sugo. It's just absolute. It's like Brands Hatch on steroids. There's other tracks. There's so many other tracks.
I can't remember the name. There's one way up in the mountains somewhere. I can't remember what it was called.
The TI. Remember the one where they had the Grand Prix, the Japanese Grand Prix at Kaisod Aida or TI, the one that where you go back to it. Do you remember where Senna spun? Or got taken out on the first corner in the Williams car, but that was an absolutely amazing track.
In 94,
I mean, there was Mine. There's so many good tracks in Japan. I mean, that way better than way better than American tracks, or I suppose England. Alton Park's probably one of the best tracks. Alton Park and Brands Hatch Grand Prix. The old Brands Hatch GP Turkey is still special. There's something about Dingle Dell. I mean, I remember hitting. I crashed the car big time at Dingle Dell, and it's like that's still a corner that you look at and go, "They shouldn't have this." It shouldn't be that.
Yeah, this shouldn't be a thing.
And then, and you go back and you look at it now. It still could never have an F1 race.
Oh no, yeah.
Although it should have an F1 race because they need to hit things. That makes racing.
Well, there needs to be things in the way, not 4.5 miles
a
run.
God, yeah. No, it's crazy. But no, the Mexican tracks were interesting. But the Mexico was great. Great racing. Great. Just a really nice place to be. Better than I mean, it's funny for Japan. Japan, it was interesting because when I was in Japan, I didn't live in Tokyo. So the drivers that lived in Tokyo loved Japan for living in Tokyo. Because they all did.
Yeah, and they were out
they're all in Roppongi, and all the gaijins were all together. Mm-hmm. But I lived in a place called Hachioji, which was about 50 kilometers outside. So it was more in like Japan. So it was a 45-minute train ride. So that was different. So I got a different experience than the Roppongi Japan, which was. I went there a couple of times. It's like it's just full of people drinking beer or drinking sake. That's it.
Home, yeah. No, that's cool. It's just, I mean, quickly, I was like Mexico as well. Happy to memories because of the success you had there. I mean, you won the titles in 95 and 97. That must have felt great, obviously, because I guess a couple of years of like misfired years, and hadn't quite gone the way you perhaps wanted it to come back, go to somewhere completely different, and win championships. Was it 95 and 97? You came third in 96.
Yep.
That must have been that kind of time must be a real great.
That was the thing about it was nice. So 94, when I finished second in 94, that was really good because it was like, oh, okay, I can do it. And then there was some good drivers there. Negri was a good benchmark to have, and Valdemar Coronas was there. Tommy Byrne, he was still doing his bit. that way. It was just nice to be successful. It was, I mean, and it didn't, you know, and a lot of people would say, oh, yeah, but you're not racing against anyone. And it was like, it doesn't matter. You still have to win. You still have to beat,
Yep,
you
can
still
only
have to
beat
beat
what's
the
there.
people that are there. And if you're doing a better job than the people that are there, the hard year was 96, where I had to sort of give it up because I had a lot of mechanicals. That was a difficult year. And then 97 was really good because I went back to winning it again. And I thought we had a really good race that year. We went to Ecuador and raced at a track in Ecuador that was absolutely unbelievable. It was almost like a spa. It had been 14 kilometers long, went around a lake, and it was an old gentleman's club, and they shortened it to make it an old jet. It's basically the rich Colombian or the rich Ecuadorians go there and drive their cars around. But it was a track in, like, you go, where do you build a track like this? It's in, you know, why? Or who did this? And it's just a bunch of guys got together and built a racetrack. But that was quite a trip.
That feels like it needs a Google. I'm going to have a look at that.
I know we flew into Quito, but that was after we flew from Mexico City to Panama to Guatemala to Costa Rica. I think we did eight stops on the way down.
You hopped through Central America.
But to talk about third world, you know, we get to the hotel room. You know, everywhere else has got normal phones. This place still had the old dial-up phones. People are looking at it going, how do you use this thing? But it was quite an experience, quite the experience. I can't remember the name of the track now. I can't.
I'm going to Google racetrack in
Ecuador. It was near Quito. It was about 50 kilometers away from Quito, which is the capital. So, but it was very, very cool. But that was the last race of that year. And we did a race in Vegas. Oh, that was 96. The 96 season was the race in Vegas. We did a race up there.
Is that the one, like the old bit of Vegas?
Yeah, it's the one out by the Speedway. Or what is now the Speedway. It's now out by where the Speedway is. It was sort of in the car park of the Speedway.
Okay, fair enough. Because they did one in old Vegas, didn't they, around the turn of the millennium? And then
that was a kart did a race in the old downtown.
That's it, because I had Will Power on and he won the race, and he beat.
I was working for Walker Racing at that time because he was driving for Walker in the Team Australia car. I was working with with the Atlantics with Simona Di Silvestro and Ryan Lewis.
Okay.
Crasher Lewis, or turn up, whatever. I think that was one of the races where he turned up. You couldn't get a visa and couldn't get in.
Oh, God.
He had quite some issues that way.
Lovely. I want to comment on your time that you spent in IRL and kart and stuff. Just quickly, when you said about championships in Mexico, things like that, and the Quaker State guys looked after you for a bit. Indy Lights. Now, as I said, love IndyCar, love Indy Next as it is now. Indy Lights. I'm always interested. What was the transition from a Mexican F3 car to Indy Lights? Because obviously they kind of all merges together in my mind, all the cars and
it's a bit like 3000. To me, it was like 3000. It was just a 3000 car with an H pattern gearbox, which was awful. I mean, that was the one part that was probably the one thing with the car that I remember being the worst thing about it was the gearbox it wasn't sequential. So it was still the old H pattern, you know, dog leg first. And it was only 5-speed, but it was a big car with a big engine, you know, like it was a heavy engine, but it was a lot of fun to go and see some of the different tracks and then do the ovals. The ovals were, I remember my first oval test was at Phoenix on the old one, not the new Phoenix, the old Phoenix, the old style where it was still the rough and it was a lot flatter. And that was, I'd say, really eye-opening. Although I had done a couple of ovals. We'd done an oval in Guadalajara in Mexico in F3, but it was very small. But this was proper speed. And then we did our rookie test. We had to do the rookie orientation thing at Vegas. That was a proper okay, we're really going quick now. But it was still, you were flat out most of the way around. So.
Yeah.
But No, there was some very eye-opening experiences that happened that year. Because going to like a 2 mile or Michigan and racing around Michigan, and then doing Fontana, they're like such big ovals that you're like lost on them with the small cars.
I remember first time I saw Fontana, even because I'd seen a few
Yeah.
ovals at that point. This was around, I think it's sadly around the time that we lost Greg Moore. I think it was around that
was
time that I first
90,
saw
that was
Fontana.
99.
1999. It was around that time.
He should never have been racing.
And I remember seeing Fontana from the air thinking, that's vast.
That thing with Greg Moore, though, he should never have been racing. He shouldn't have been.
Well, no, he was
Yeah,
risk,
I mean, it's like, of all the stupid things that they did, they lost a good guy there because he shouldn't have been driving.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, there was some. Yeah. I mean, for me, the best oval, only because I won it, was Milwaukee.
I was going to say you won it there twice,
2
didn't
years
you?
in a row.
On the Milwaukee Mile.
It was,
and it's back in IndyCar, which is great.
mean that's back then. We were still running it on low downforce. So you had the low downforce or the road course set up, but we ran it on low downforce, and that was, you actually braked. You actually really did do a proper job of driving it, and I think that's why I liked it. Is you had to, I mean, you were doing like 170 mile an hour turning into turn one, and had to brake and then make sure you balance the car. So it was a proper. It felt to me like a proper track. There was one that there was Nazareth. I absolutely hated Nazareth.
I've actually got my thumb on the word Nazareth right
Nazareth.
here.
It was probably the most difficult 1 mile oval in America.
Because that's gone now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gone. It's been built up, but
ruined. Because it was the one where Mario Andretti he sort of cut his
Michael
teeth on there,
was really good there. But it was one of the there was so much going on. It wasn't an oval because it was a tri-oval in such a small space that had an uphill section. It was just I just never liked the place. I liked Milwaukee from the moment I drove there. You know, it's just a really good.
How you just don't get on with some places, isn't it? I mean, I think every driver's got that kind of circuit. Yeah. They just didn't get on.
I remember going. Now there was a story about going to Nazareth. The first year I went to Nazareth, I qualified 6th and we got penalised on a rolling start that got waved off, and I got penalised for jumping the start, but I didn't jump the start, but it was waved off, and they penalised me and gave me a drive-through, and I was like. And I remember afterwards, the chief steward's like, yeah, we made a mistake. I said, great, but you gave me a drive-through. You could have, but it was one of those sort of. And so after that, I just never liked it. Thankfully, we only went there twice. Never went there again.
Yeah.
There are two tracks I really loved in as Milwaukee and Cleveland. Now, Cleveland was probably one of the best racetracks.
Because that was street, wasn't it?
Airfield.
Or was it? Oh, the F, yes, with the big wide F, yeah.
It was one of the places.
And you could get a cool picture of your car in front of a big plane. That's it.
You'd go there and you'd go, wow, there's no way we're going to use all this road. There's no way we're going to be out. And you use every single piece. Yeah, like it is, and it's probably one of the most fun tracks to drive. Because
I spoke, actually, we mentioned about Tagliani before. I spoke with him, and he had a bit of a. I think, well, everyone had a set two with Paul Tracy, didn't they? But I mean, he had a set two with Paul Tracy and there was someone else because basically he was driving on the outside and he turned in and the others just thought, there's so much road, I'm not going to turn in. I'm going to try a different line and basically just shove Tagliani off into the...
him and Tracy didn't get on very well. There was a couple of others, but then Tagliani didn't get on with quite a few people. He had his sort of attitude of things like that, but you know.
Yeah. I do like Tag. He's a good guy. But yes, Cleveland. Yeah, it always it's good for the photographers if you get a big old jumbo jet part.
Well, yeah, I mean, but also it was a great view because it was a good track because they could run it late at night. So they ran a night race there. There was also the Detroit race is a good one when it was on Belle Isle.
Yeah, not on the new one. Which
I don't even understand why they bothered with this other one. It doesn't make sense.
They've basically done it because of that long bumpy straight and the hairpin, haven't they? Just to create a bit of jeopardy.
Well, it's the GM building as well, isn't it? So it's outside that, so that makes a difference that way. I mean, I suppose I never actually drove Road America, which I'm not. I don't really not really worried that I didn't because to me it's too long. It's a 4 mile. It's a 4 mile track of straights. It's a lot of straights at Road
Really.
America.
That's true. I mean, it's kind of good for the fans who get to see the cars thumping around at high speed, but I guess it's not the most interesting for a driver.
No,
perhaps.
I don't. I mean, I don't think there's. I mean, there's only one challenging corner, but Mid-Ohio's a great track to practice, but not a good track to race.
Okay.
You know, it's not. It's. I mean, that's that, and it's the same. I mean, that's the problem they have there is. So you got Mid-Ohio and Laguna Seca, great tracks, but you can't race.
Yeah.
Because you can't overtake because they don't seem to understand the logic of making hairpins or bends or stuff like that. But then you got Long Beach. Long Beach is great.
I mean, they've altered turn one at Laguna Seca in recent years, haven't they? Kind of tightened it a bit to make it.
Yeah, but it's still a boring race.
It's still.
I mean, you start at the front, you finish at the front. You don't. There's not a lot.
Everyone watching kind of tunes in for the corkscrew, and 20 laps in, you're like,
that's a shame because it's a good track that way. Trying to think of others.
I actually saw a cool picture of you going down the corkscrew head on. It does look.
It's actually one of the most difficult places to keep finding the same braking point, because if you come out of the last corner a little bit better, you gain a little bit of speed. So you think you've got to go up and think, okay, I've got to go up and forget that I don't want to overcharge it because it doesn't matter. I've got to get out and down the hill because you're going to gain more going down the hill, and then the next corner is probably the most difficult corner because it's a really quick corner that you can get a lot of speed there. The left-hander down the big compression there. But I mean, look, I had some good races at Laguna. I suppose that's the one thing they still don't have. I'm not sure that they need to get some better road courses there.
Yeah.
I mean, Barber. Yeah. I remember going and doing the track inspection for kart. We did 2 days there. I mean, great track, wonderful, but can't overtake unless you dive bomb people, which is, it's not a lot of fun that way.
Is it Barber that's got the big spider?
It's got loads of. It's got the
spider and a big other thing.
Things all over the. I mean, it's got an amazing museum. It's got a really cool museum. I mean, and George Barber, the place is immaculate. It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, really looked after. But it's just, I don't know why. I don't know that Americans really get street on road course racing. I still think they've got this attitude about bike racing. So they make so Laguna's a good bike track. Barber's a great bike track. Yeah, but they're not really good car tracks. It's like Kota. I mean, talk about, it's a bit of over the top.
It's I mean, I saw in NASCAR they basically said, we aren't using half the circuit.
Yeah, they're not using half.
Go through the
and then they don't have. I mean, that's the one thing when IndyCar went there, they didn't have track limits, and that just ruins a race as well. Because then you're watching cars driving off a track, going, "Where's the racetrack?" But then you've got the other problem is then you got track limits to the point of where F1's gone to the stage of, I don't understand why they can't do what they do in MotoGP and have sensors in the track that if you go over, you're done. Where it shouldn't be a judge, it should be a simple sensor.
And it shouldn't be a human judgment call because there's human error. If it's a machine,
but you look at MotoGP. MotoGP though, MotoGP, they ride on the green paint. The green paint's got a sensor. It flashes up. You've gone over the green paint. You're done. I mean, Formula One can't copy that.
Surely there must be a way. I mean, especially Formula One and the circuits they use, the money that's in it. I mean, it's not so easy further down the ladder. But I mean, I forget who it was. I think it was it at Navarra or was it Aragon or somewhere like that. And there was all this hoo-ha. All the bike fans were saying, I don't know who it was. I don't know if it was Worlds or if it was Moto. I can't remember. But they said, oh, yeah, but he hasn't gained an advantage. He's gone wide. It's only about that much off. It doesn't matter.
That's what I like.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you gained or what you didn't. You went too wide.
But they have a good rule. MotoGP have a really good one as well. So if you do it on the last lap, you get 3 seconds. So you get an extra penalty. So you can't just do it and save up one. Like you haven't done it. You haven't done it. Like, in Formula One, you get 4 attempts and then you get the black and white. But with Moto, there's some things in MotoGP they do very well. I mean, I must admit, that's the thing I really enjoy watching. I just think those guys are nuts.
Yeah. I mean, again, anyone who's tuned in will know that I'm a big bikes fan. The first time I went to trackside was bikes, and Terry Reimer fell off in front of me at Brand. Sorry, Terry, he's been on as well. But it's fantastic.
They're just mad.
And the BSB, like the Bennett's British Superbike Championship.
That last year's finale at Brands was just.
Oh, you could watch that.
That was just crazy.
All day,
those last few laps were just. I mean, that was the best TV you'd watched all year for most of the time.
I think I would say that, and I think it was the Thruxton round in 2022 because it was a bloody heat wave. I was dying. I was at the complex. I was there, and I think it's races 2 and 3. I think it was race 2, the first race on the Sunday at Thruxton. It was Jason O'Halloran, Taron McKenzie, and Carl Ride, 2 mechanics and one of the OMG guys. And they counted in the last 7 laps, the lead changed hands something like 48 times or something, or 68 times. And they were never more than that far away from each other. Never in any danger. It was phenomenal.
No, they did some good racing that way, don't they? That BSB is really good now.
Yeah, it's cracking. But again, it comes back to the tracks. Yeah, the track things. I mean, I was just seeing a comment here. We got MSV tracks have got some of the pressure plates. You know, if Jonathan Palmer can do it, then the others can. Yeah, I mean, obviously they haven't got them everywhere where they need them. And
I just think it's something that they've got to fix.
Certainly at top level, you can put them everywhere. Put them on the inside. Put them on the outside. Put them everywhere.
But I mean, or go back to what I like. There's a comment that Anthony Davidson makes, and I always think he's the best when he says it. If he had a wall, it would fix it. It would fix everything.
Exactly. We don't talk about track limits in Baku
or Monaco, no.
or Vegas or Miami, which is an absolute armpit of a circuit. But but all those circuits, Macau, never an issue, and it's always the ones that we enjoy the most. Okay, the circuit might be rubbish, but there's no guff around track limits.
Baku's one of the best ones. I
love it.
It's a really. I mean, Monaco. They've got to fix Monaco somehow.
Well, they've got to make the cars, because Formula E, all the support series, Porsche Super Cup, it's always brilliant racing. F1, too big.
They're way too big, aren't they? They're massive.
Smaller cars.
Well, I suppose they're going to do this thing now. They're talking about 2 pit stops, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, so we can now overtake in the pit. So
let's make it not on the track. I'm surprised they haven't. Yeah. I'm reckoning they're going to change Monaco's layout because they keep reclaiming all this land. There must be a plan for them to go out into that new hotel area or something. Maybe.
Yeah,
they've got to do something. Maybe. They got to make something happen, because it's a shame, because it's one of those tracks. I mean, I don't know how you fix it all.
Yeah, I mean, there's too much going on, and then people say, well, if you do it in F1, you've got to do it in Formula E, and if you do it in that, you've got to do it in something else. And basically, the argument is, if you do it in F1, you've got to do it at club racing, and you can't. So we're not going to do it. It's like, well, no.
I don't know. There's some tracks that they've done some things to that I don't understand. Like, okay, for me, the Australian Grand Prix, the old track was a lot more entertaining than this flat out burst of like, let's just drive flat out.
Yeah.
And people.
Adelaide was always fabulous.
But then it's also like what they did with Bahrain at the end of the year, where they made that last. Where it used, why didn't you make that corner that's a long left-hander a really hard-braking hairpin? They don't seem to make corners with hairpins or late braking. So that's just something I've never understood.
It all seems to be big sweeping things with high speed and nice photos, but
it's like Silverstone. I mean, Silverstone, Maggots and Beckett's is great, but is it Stowe at the end of the straight should be a really tight right-hander, not a long fourth or fifth gear corner. If you made that a really like heavy braking corner,
I like what they've done with club. That little left,
that would be
right.
Good.
That's quite
but
good.
They could do that. There's so many things they can do with track.
It's a bit in the middle. I hate Vale and all that guff in the middle. Hate all that. Get them straight on down, Abbey. Get on with it. Down to
the old one that they still had bridge was probably the best layout. That where the pits would have been, where the bridge and then they came left. That was a bit more Silverstone, wasn't it?
yeah, proper. It still felt like a perimeter road, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But then doesn't anymore. Blame Hans Tilke. Yes, we
Yes,
will.
always.
We'll blame him. Just on one more before we just want to zap on with when you're in lights, and I just want to get onto the spotting and stuff like that. But I've got a note here. You took podiums at Long Beach. I like Long Beach.
Brilliant place.
I liked. I love watching the old footage of the old circuit, which they still use bits of. You know, when they plunged down the hill and then left. That looked brilliant. And there's a lap. I think it's Depaye doing a lap, and it's a fabulous bit of video on the in car. But I guess you raced on like the newer one now, which they use.
I've raced 3 versions of it. So
Have you? Okay.
So I raced the one that was you went down shoreline and did the right left, and then you didn't have the fountain.
See, I love the fountain, especially when a car ends up in the flowers.
So I didn't. I did the one that they didn't have the fountain. Then I did the one that they did have the fountain, and the one with the fountain is better because it's a nicer layout and it's a better situation.
So pleased you said that because people say, oh, it's like obviously a roundabout on a street circuit and a fountain. It's gimmicky.
No, it's part of the road.
Point of view, I'm very glad that you said
it's part of the road. I mean, but there's Long Beach has got another problem where they still need to make. It's a difficult place to overtake. I mean, it's another one of those ones where it needs more braking corners.
But they do have a very, very tight hairpin. Unfortunately, there's a left-hander about 50 yards before it. So it's
that. I mean, I suppose that's now becoming an overtaking bit because people just keep crashing there. But the Long Beach event is a really good event. It's a great track. It's a good atmosphere because it's right downtown. And that's a good one in that respect.
Yeah, and it's on quite late at night in the UK, so you can sit and watch it and have some peace and quiet. But I mean, so you had 4 years in Indy Lights and
I had 3 years in Indy Lights.
3 and a bit because you did. I did see you did a test, wasn't it? Was it at Walt Disney
World?
That
was my IndyCar rookie test.
That was the
IRL sort of IndyCar rookie test.
Yeah, whatever.
So I drove a car the day before Sam Schmidt's accident. Yeah,
really?
So I was at the same track I was there the day that he had that crash.
Oh goodness!
Yeah, and that was.
I mean, we should say he's gone on to do very well with what's now Arrow McLaren and everything. Isn't it?
I saw him do that. I saw him do that 100 mile an hour lap of Indy in the when he did it in the Chevrolet in the Corvette. That was just. I mean, stunning. I don't know how he keeps going.
Oh,
I mean, how he keeps going with how little he can actually. Well, he can do an awful lot more, it seems, but. No, he's done. No, that was one of the reasons why I actually stopped driving because I'd done that. I was talking with Dennis McCormack, and I was just like, you know what? I don't have enough money to do it properly, and I don't want to drive a car that I just wasn't in. I wasn't in the mood to get into IRL. I just didn't. I didn't feel comfortable, and I didn't have enough money to go to a good team. So I was like, you know what, I'm not ready for this anymore. And then I didn't want to. I made maybe a mistake or something. I didn't want to just be a driver just competing. I didn't want to just do races for the sake of, like, I didn't want to go and do a touring car race and be racing not touring car so much because you would have been all right. But one of these where it's got 6 different classes and you're racing in class F and you might be second, but nobody would know that you finished second. And I suppose that, as I call it, I didn't need to wear Nomex just to keep being in racing. There was other things I could do in racing that I thought, look, I don't need to just keep trying to drive. I've done my driving. I wore the T-shirt. I did it, and I was okay, and I was as successful as I was. But I just didn't have this burning desire to keep trying to pretend to be a racing driver and not be, because I don't think I could have done well if I'd just been, just doing it. There's a lot of the. I suppose you get it a little bit with the Le Mans has it a little bit, doesn't it? you get these class of drivers that they're not a certain level, but they're silver or what is it, bronze?
Yeah,
The bronze, silver, or gold
yeah,
category, but they have to have them to make up a situation. I just don't need to wear Nomex that much. You know, I'd worn
yeah,
it, done it, and so then that's why I wanted to get back into the other stuff. Well, I was more interested in doing other stuff.
yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
why I got into
So obviously,
coaching, really, I suppose.
yeah. So I guess it wasn't like a difficult thing to like hang up the helmet, so to speak. It was a case of it's just
It's just
time.
time.
This
It
is
just there was no opportunity. There was an
yeah,
opportunity, and the opportunity I had was like, do I really want to put myself in a situation where you've just seen a guy turn into a paraplegic? I know that. I mean, and
yeah,
you know, you're not driving for a Penske team or Andretti or Panther or a bigger team that's gonna. I remember when I did my rookie test, they didn't make me a seat, and I was really lucky because if I'd had a crash,
you'd have been.
I'd have been done. And I just didn't. I wasn't enjoying it. And it just felt like it was time to say I can put my experience somewhere else. And so when the coaching situation came up, I was like, yeah, okay, that'll work.
Oh,
Yeah, so
fair.
that's when I started with Ryan Hunter-Ray.
Oh, I honestly, I'm a big fan of Ryan Hunter-Ray. I've been a fan for a long time. I've been trying to make contact with him, and honestly, it's like trying to contact the Pope.
Yeah, he's very he's a very intense character.
Yeah, yeah,
He's he's good. I was really glad to see him win the Indy. When
yeah. That
that
was
was a
cool.
cool, that, especially the way he won it.
Yeah, and in the DHL car, it
Yeah,
just looked good,
everything.
didn't
Well,
it?
him in the Benzoil car with Elio and beating Elio.
Oh,
Yeah,
Pennzoil. Love
yeah.
that
I'm
livery.
surprised.
So
I
simple.
suppose Elio can't have that because he's coming back, isn't he, this year? And Sato's back. Sato will
Yeah,
never quit, will he? I mean, it's like, God,
Tato is one of my favourite human beings in
he's
the
such a
world.
nice guy,
He's
but it's like, when is he ever going to stop?
it's like Taco, you've done it,
Yeah,
mate.
quit. I mean, the only thing with Taku is, and I think the one thing that worries me about him is he's borderline dangerous. He's in the
Yeah,
500. He's on the edge of being out. Like he'll push it to a point where you know.
where it's like,
Oh yeah.
"Ooh."
I mean, the thing with Dario.
Yeah. But he knows it as well. I spoke to
Uh-huh.
him on here. I spoke to him on here. Firstly, what I love about him is that he's 48, I think,
Yeah.
48 years old. And you get him talking about a car that he's driven or a race or something, and he still sounds like a 7-year-old
Oh,
kid who's just seen
yeah.
a car for the first time. And he's got the little lisp as well. He's like, oh, it's so good. It's
Yeah,
great. He
he's a very
loves it.
excitable character.
He's absolutely brilliant. But as you say, I said, because he said that thing, was it no? He came up with something. It was like no risk, no
gain or something.
point,
Yeah.
or something like that. I can't remember what it was. And you think, yeah, but just.
Well, I mean, he could have won. I think he could have run 2 more Indies had he been smarter.
But he had the thing with Dario.
Yeah, I mean, the one with
When
Dario. Well, the one with Dario, I don't think he would have won. But I think there was one other. There's been a couple of others where he could have done something a little bit differently. But he's super quicker. Well, the thing about him that's interesting about Indy is he'll go the whole week and he doesn't look like he's anywhere. Then all of a sudden gets to qualifying, he's like, bang! You go, where'd that come from?
It's like, yeah.
I don't understand
it's
why
like
he's got the Rahal though. I don't. That was a decision that Rahal suck at Indy. They suck. They
Yes.
suck. I mean, they suck.
I think Graham had a shout. Was it 2021? I think, or was it?
Was that the
I
one
can't
where the
remember when
wheel
it was,
fell
and his
off?
wheel fell off.
Where he hit
His wheel. But apart from that, obviously Bobby's a legend and he's won it. But there's something about the team, as you say, they just can't quite.
There's something about the team and the way that there's an oddness about that, in that you would have thought that with all their money and all their resources, they would have gone. Although I suppose maybe this year they might, because Cannon's available, isn't he? Mike Cannon's available because he didn't go to the Juncos Hollinger. He was there. Oh no, it was Prima. He was supposed to work with Prima, but then Prima did.
Oh, and there was a big
and he gone. So if they could get Cannon, maybe they could have a better Indy, because he seems to be good at. Like he did well when he went to Dale Coyne and did all the bits and pieces that way.
Yeah. I mean, we've actually said the last couple of years, said who do you think is going to win Indy, and we said, well, not Rahal.
No, it won't be a Rahal. Won't be a Rahal car
Because it's almost the go-to. It's
you
like
look at Christian Lundgaard. I mean, he must have been like, oh my God, I've got to get out and go to McLaren because I can't stay here anymore.
Yeah.
I can't go to the 500. I mean, as much as all the other races, it is the 500.
Oh,
you win the 500, it doesn't matter what you do for the rest of the year. So Palou has
Yeah.
got to win the 500 before he leaves. And there was that one year where he should have won it. I mean, Dixon's my favourite all the time. I mean, he's the guy I always want to win it.
Because, I mean, that guy should have won 5.
6 or 7.
He should have the record on his own. And I think when we were there in 2022, I was sitting there and I turned to my mate Dan, and he's a big fan of like Dixon, and I just turned to him and it was one of my mates, and I just went, because I before I went, I said, I don't care who wins. I don't care. I mean, I'm a bit of a Penske man because Rick Mears won the first one I ever went to, so I kind of follow Penske. I've interviewed Will Power. I'd love him to win it, but I don't really care. And I said to him with about 40 odd laps to go, saying, Dixon's got this. This is going to be, and I was pleased. I was like, we're going to see Scott Dixon win the Indy 500.
Crazy, and then speeding in pit
and then he outbraked him.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I don't think you could. I don't think it's. I mean, it's interesting. Now it looks like Penske have got it figured out again, which was a surprise because they.
And certainly Newgarden on the ovals. He's
strange. He's so good.
Because after winning the Indy last year, he just until he got to Iowa.
Yeah, but he always went to Iowa. That was that. No, I mean, I mean, the 500 is always a weird one. I still don't understand, and it always when we were there and I was doing the spotting for it, is why they race so soon, and the smart ones don't. You get these guys that are racing in lap 25. It's like you've got 175 laps to go. It's like the good guys don't bother. The good guys just.
And they just line themselves up for lap 180.
Like Pagenaud. Although Pagenaud drove it a different way. He said, I'm going to lead. I'm going to lead as many laps as I can, and I'm not going to get myself into trouble. And it worked for him. But the only thing I wish they do is there's not as much overtaking like as there used to be. There used to be more, like it used to be easier for them to get by because there was a bigger drag factor. Now it looks like it's got away. If you get into the lead, I remember. Okay, so that year with Ericsson, when Newgarden won it, I never understood why Ericsson didn't lift in the middle of the short strut between 1 and 2 and screw Newgarden.
Yep.
If he'd have lifted,
just drop him back.
No, because what would have happened was Newgarden would have had to lift, but he didn't. He drove through the corner flat out, and it's like, dude, just back him out. But that's when Newgarden's very clever. He seems to be just in the right spot at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I actually we're going to digress. I mean, I want to talk about your time actually, because you were with like Conquest Racing, and then you went on to so was it Panthers?
No, I did the Atlantics. I did Formula Atlantics with Walker, or Derek Walker with Pagenaud. We won the Atlantic Championship with Pagenaud. So that was Derek Walker's first actual championship he'd won. So that was a big deal.
I'm a big fan of Pagenaud, by the way.
Simon and I had a really good year that year. And is he ever going to come back and race, or is?
Well, it's been over a year now, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I saw something on his Facebook where he's sent some message out, but it looks like he's really been scrambled.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge.
It was a massive
roll, wasn't it? I forget.
Mid-Ohio.
Was it Mid? No, it was Mid-Ohio, wasn't it? And he barrel rolled and all that. But I mean, I actually contacted him and they said, "Yeah, we'll try and get something sorted in the off season." Then that happened, and I've not had anything since. But yeah, cool.
No, he was. So I ran him, and then the following year we ran Simona. Then I went to Conquest. Then went to Panther with the National Guard deal. When I started work the week after Hildebrand had hit the fence, leading it on the last.
I had I had JR on here. He's so matter of fact about it. He's like, well, I knew it was going to happen. The car was slowing down in front of me. I had to go high. I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, but he didn't have to go high. He was yeah, Hildebrand.
Self-preservation is
Yeah, he was. I think he tried to justify himself, but that was quite interesting because seeing that car after it came back from that was quite interesting because I started working for them as I actually ended up being the purchasing manager. So I did. I worked out how much money we spent on buying all the parts that we had to buy for that. It was an expensive project.
I bet it was. Actually, just on that, before we get on to another couple of bits. Obviously, we know who won the Indy 500 that year when JR had his whack was Dan.
He was the first driver I spotted for.
I was going to say actually because he came into Indy Lights
Yeah,
when you
we
were
raced
in
together in
the
Indy
series.
Lights. Yeah.
And I did sort of see kind of somewhere among many names that you spotted for that Dan was one of them. I've asked this to a few people and I've spoken to a few people that were involved in the accident as well, and I don't like it because it is what it is. But by all accounts, everyone loved Dan.
Yeah. It was a stupid way for him to get involved in a. I would never understand why he had to drive so crazily in that race.
Yeah, well, I think they were all far. I mean, they all said this is stupid. We're going too fast, and obviously Dan didn't need to be there.
No, but not only that, he didn't need to drive the way he drove. That part, and he didn't. I think that whole $1 million bonus that he was on got into his head, which I didn't understand. But and Dan was a good. I mean, Dan was. I remember spotting for him as crazy guy. I mean, God, he could do things on an oval, but he could have some big crashes too. He seemed to have like this ability to either do it really well or to like crash.
Just mess it up. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's a strange one with him. I mean, I remember when he arrived after he'd done his teeth, and he came
white,
and I mean, I remember it was like, wow, Dan, and he's like, oh yeah, he was a great guy. He had a great personality. I remember he was a nice kid. And, you know, no one deserves to have an accident like that. Although it's almost like when you watch it, being there and watching it, you're like, you never even bothered to lift. It seemed like there was no awareness of having spotted, you know that, okay, you would have been shouting that it's gone yellow. He would have known it's gone yellow. I mean, I know because Hildebrand was involved in it as well. Because we got...
And I know... And Will was in there, wasn't there? Remember,
there was everybody in there. It was it was
TK was in it, and but I mean, everyone seems to say lovely things about Dan, which is great to hear.
I raced karts with him. I know, I raced karts with his dad.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go karts against his dad because then he came along a bit later. He came along just at the end of when I was leaving karting. He just got in and started winning championships and stuff. That one. Yeah.
Just quickly, I mean, because obviously those of us who follow American racing will know what a spotter is, does, and why they're there. And I spoke with Ryan Vargas, the NASCAR chap, and he's just done a bit of spotting as well. And he said, I didn't know how difficult it was. He said, I thought it was easy. Keith Mayle in the comments, along with many other comments that I have seen. Hello, folks. Keith Mayo said, what exactly does a spotter do and how does it work? Basically, what you do, it depends on, so each driver is different. Some drivers want to know when there's a car around them. Like if there's a car, Indy's a really interesting thing because at Indy we've got two spotters. So you've got a spotter at turn 1 and then you've got a spotter at turn 3 because you can't do the whole track because you can't see it. So your visibility of the car is as they come out of turn 2, you're watching them coming down the straight. And first of all, the hard part is it's really hard to pick them out because they're a long way away because they're a mile away. And then basically you're looking at the guy either as a guy got a slipstream and he's going to make a run. So you're telling him that, okay, there's a car looking or there's a car inside. What you're trying to do is just give the driver the ability to know what's around him. Like if you were driving down the motorway
and you would say, okay, car inside, car outside, you would know that there were cars outside you rather than having to use mirrors. So you're basically just a set of wing mirrors, but you're trying to help give him a bit more of an idea. The harder part is if someone makes a dive, then you can't do anything. I mean, the year I spotted from Montoya. Now,
which is I did want to ask about that.
That was quite interesting because the whole week of that, it's like, oh, you're talking too much. Okay, you're not talking enough. I need you to do this, and finally, I remember turning around to him and saying, okay, one, you're a racing driver. You're an amazing racing car driver. Do you really need me to talk to you? Do you really need me to like be in your ear going car high, car low? What do you really want? He said, all I want to know is if there's a car, if there's a car coming or making a go, then tell me that. I was like, great, that's all I could do then. So I don't need to talk to you. Because some of the spotters, there's a lot of spotters that love to almost drive the car. Like you hear them on the radio, and especially some of the NASCAR guys are a bit different because they're doing ovals all the time. But in IndyCar, there are some that are.
There's so much going on in NASCAR.
There's a lot going on, a lot more going on. But with IndyCar, there's some drivers that don't want to hear anything other than, okay, there's a car coming, there's a car looking. But it's quite challenging because you've got to spend all the time watching the car, especially Indy. Indy's probably the most difficult because you've got to pretty much, from the time you lose it going out of 4 onto the pit straight, you've almost either got to count or have an idea of how long it's going to take for the car to come back into view and in what relative position it's in. So you've got to remember what relative position it was in going into 1, which you can't see, then hope that it comes out in the same relative position coming out so you can pick it that way. And then you've got to just spend the time watching. But it can be a lot of fun when you do it well. But it's quite strenuous, especially Indy, because it can be 4 hours of standing on a grandstand. There's a lot of yellows and a lot of stuff like that. So it's
because I know some people say at the 500. Say some people stand on top of the stand. Some people have got someone on the pagoda. Some people have got them standing. It just depends on the driver and what they need to know and when I get.
They generally only have the 2. You can't the ones on the pagoda. Some people like to stand on the pagoda, but you can't see enough. Although I do think that the pagoda would be a better place to stand. I think that's one thing Indy could do, is make a better spotter stand. Like I almost think it needs to be on top of the grandstand on the main straight.
Where the comms box
was. above that way. But because turn 1, spotting at turn 1 is quite fun. I've done both. I've done turn 1 and turn 2, and they're interesting. Definitely. I mean, because you got to use binoculars because you can't see the cars. So you especially can't spot them and then you've got all these cars that are the same colours, and that's another issue because unless you get the lucky ones where you've got like the red and white car or
or like Pagano in what was it?
Well, he had the shell car.
When did he win it?
He had the pencil car.
When did Pagano? Because he won it in the Menards, didn't he? The luminous yellow day glow.
It was Menards.
You can't miss.
But it was Penske though, wasn't it?
It was a Penske.
It was driving for Roger at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah. So that's a bonus.
If you get those, it's really good. But if you get ones that you've got like a teammate and they've all got the same car, like the Penske cars that year, I think all 3 of them were Verizon. The year I spotted from Montoya, you had Will was in a Verizon car, Montoya was in a Verizon car, and even the other one was a Shell car, and it was red and white. And it was like, you got to do something to make these cars look a little bit different.
Help out the spotters. That's why these one-off liveries they do at the Indy 500, I guess, can help the spotters go.
No, for sure. I mean, I think Indy's are quite an interesting one to spot for. The others like Texas or Milwaukee, or they're all pretty easy because actually Texas is weird because you used to sit in a inside the grandstand, but in a closed room, so you didn't hear the cars. So it's really weird because you were inside, so you were in air conditioning because it was stupid hot. And I remember doing one of the races I did was with Weldon early on, and I spent 2.5 hours talking to Dan, and he never heard a word I said because his radio never worked. But we kept asking him if his radio's working on the back straight, and he kept waving, and we're like, okay, so he must be hearing us, but he couldn't talk back. 2.5 hours later, I finished the race, and he's going, "Why weren't you talking to me?" I'm like, "I was. I spent 2.5 hours
2.5 hours rabbiting at you.
And that was with the great Pancho Carter, who's the
Pancho Carter, there's a
the
name.
spotter. He's the spotter guru, like he's the one that does everything. So it was quite funny, that one.
I remember it was one of those that I remember when I was watching Indy 500 in the late 80s and the early 90s. Because I had Paul Page on here. What an honor that was.
He's a good guy.
And he now refers to me as his friend, and it's like, oh my goodness, I'm friends
Paul
with
Page.
Paul
What a voice! What the voice of.
I always remember as soon as he started talking when I said Paul Page, and he said, "Hey Rich, how you doing?" And he sort of did that kind of thing, and all the comments went, "Oh, the voice!"
Yeah, he had one of that. There was another one that's got that Bob. Oh no! One in that ESPN time when it was all when there was a few of the guys that back in that ESPN 80s 90s.
It wasn't Bob. Was it Pot? No, it wasn't Bob Pockris. Who was it?
Oh,
because Bobby Unser did it as well, and his voice. I love Bobby's voice. Did Baddy Unser? But I tell you about every time I hear the name Pancho Carter, I hear it in Paul Page's voice.
Yeah, no, he worked at Panther.
He raced in
He worked at Panther, and then because that's when I worked with Dan, he came and did 2 races at the end of the year with Panther.
Right.
Because we did Kansas and Texas. The old Texas, not before they went and flattened it and spoilt it and stopped it from being 2-lane racing. But gone back to those days when IRL was that 3-wide racing at Texas, and there was the Kenny Brack crashes and all that. That was just mayhem. I mean,
it was It was ridiculous.
It was. I mean, and now, at least now that it's not as dangerous now. Or it doesn't appear to be as dangerous now. They don't seem to have as many crazy accidents. Even at Indy, they don't have crazy accidents.
No, I mean, and also the strength of the cars and stuff as well, which helps. And the cars don't break up so it doesn't look quite as spectacular as they did. And the thing is, I mentioned we went to Carb Day in 2022, and of all the times that I've been watching racing, I never ever saw a car go upside down in front of me. It never happened. And walked in to Carb Day and they had the screen on the outside of the stand, and we're like, "Oh, here we go, we're going in." And with that, Hertha went over.
Yeah.
That was on. We literally just got there. I didn't see it in person, and I was just like, "Wow, welcome to Indy." It is terrifying when they do it at the speeds there. Because you've spotted for a lot of people, haven't you? I mean, you went around Hunter Ray, Dan Weldon, Juan Pablo Marco, Tag. I'm going to have to contact Tag and say,
I did that. Yeah, did Tag when he did the I can't. That was the year that the Brazilian Bruno Junqueira qualified the car, and he had to step out for Tag to get in.
Oh yeah.
Tag, because I remember I was helping on the second car, and he didn't get in the first car, but then Bruno got in the car in one day and just went out and just blitzed it, and then they had to take him out and put Tag in the car.
Yeah, okay. Because you also spotted for Townsend Bell, who's obviously gone on and done the broadcasting.
He was a nemesis of mine in Indy Lights.
I was going to say you raced against him as well, didn't you?
We did not like each other at all. It was so funny to end up working with him.
What was that like when you first said spotting?
He was told that it was happening, and he had a chat, and he said the chat was, "So we all over what happened in Indy Lights?" And he said, "Yeah, as long as you are." And I'm like, "Yep, okay, well, we're good then." The main purpose of that is I was asked to take him out of a race. And I did.
I didn't.
Yeah, no, that's just. I did. I took him out at Laguna, and then the following year he tried to take me out another race, being a lap down, and we went into the steward's office, and it was like, "Okay, what is your problem?" And almost got into a fight. So it was. We really did not like each other at all. He was very American. That's the best way I can put it. I mean, he's done well. He's done well in the commentary. I mean, I think he seems to do well. I have to say, I am baffled by what on earth is Will Buxton doing over in IndyCar. I'm baffled.
I'm glad
I'm
said
baffled.
that.
I don't understand. I mean, I'm sorry.
I'm not going
The
to comment.
coverage was absolutely dreadful. It was. I mean, it was hard to. I mean, God, if you imagine if we'd had that many commercials on F1,
Oh,
I mean, it seemed like it was every 30 seconds. It was okay, and they're gone.
and yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I don't
Just all
understand.
that.
To me, Townsend and James Hinchcliffe do a good job. The guy in the pit lane is brilliant, Kevin Lee.
Kevin is. So I've got a lot of time for Hinch because I messaged him about this time 3 years ago, saying, "You're always active on Twitter. You seem to respond to people. Do you want to come on and have a chat? Because I've been a fan of IndyCar and I'd love to talk to you. Are you okay to talk about the injury and all that?" He goes, "Yeah, no problem at all." And he said, let me know when. And we set a date. And I said, "I'm actually going to be at the 500. I'll be there at Carb Day. If I see you, I'll come and grab you." And I saw him. He was on like a scooter, bombing up and down the thing. And he was whizzing by. And I saw him. And I went, "James." And I spoke to James. And rather than just sort of look over his shoulder and carry on, he stopped and came round. And he goes, "Hey, man, how you doing?" And I went, "Oh, I'm so glad that I caught you." And he said, "By your accent, you're Rich from the Hard Compound, right?"
Right.
And he goes, "Thank you so much for stopping and having a chat." And he came over and honestly couldn't.
He's a good guy. I mean, he's Canadian.
Couldn't have been nicer. And he's really good at what he does as well.
That's the Canadian part, isn't it? So
Yes.
he's got a bonus that way. I
can't do a Canadian accent. I just
don't get why Will Buxton's gone to IndyCar.
Yeah.
What happened at F1 though? Did he upset somebody or did he just?
I don't know if he's fed up with all the stuff around it. Who knows? I mean,
maybe it'll get better. I suppose. I mean, maybe down the road they'll. But God, if Fox have to have that many commercials, it's gonna. I can't believe it's going down well. Although they got higher ratings than they've ever had.
I mean, it seems to have gone well the first
time.
Got
1.3 million viewers, which is big for IndyCar.
Thing is, I mean, I'm actually quite fairly pally with like Tom Gaymore, who does the Sky Sport thing. Basically, I had him on here for a chat, and because he talks and there's a bit of a port, and people say, "Why does he do that?" And he said, "And I know I do it." And he's talking about all the voices he's got in his ears, and we're going back to commercial. They're coming back from in the States. No, they're not. Stay on. You got 15 seconds. It's up. But he said, because everyone was having a go at Sky Sports saying, "Why aren't you showing the practice from St. Pete? Why aren't you doing it?" And he basically emailed me and said, "Can you share this as well?" Because he said basically he thought that the Fox were using the international feed to Sky for the practice at St. Pete as like the guinea pig for their new graphics. And they said, and he thought they would maybe unconfirmed. That's not
it didn't
gospel.
Come on when it was supposed to.
On record. But he basically said, they basically sacrificed the international feed because they're probably, how else are they going to test all their new fancy bits that they're doing? And he said he was a bit annoyed because he'd got in quite late in the evening into Sky Sports HQ to do his thing. And they went, "Yeah, it's not working." And they went, "Well, why not? What can we do?" And they went, "We can't do anything. It's all Fox."
No, I mean, hopefully it gets better because, I mean, thank God it didn't have commercials like for the actual race coverage because I couldn't believe if you were in America, you'd have gone mad watching all those commercials.
Oh, absolutely.
But they'll get it better, hopefully.
But I'm sure they will. But yes. Anyway, folks, IndyCar, watch it. It's brilliant.
Yeah, everyone, go to Indy. If you get the chance, go to Indy 500.
I've always said that I would only go once. No, I'm going again. It's awesome. It's awesome. I mean, we've been at 2 hours, 15 minutes, and it's flown by, and I've loved it. But what I'm going to do, what I like to do is ask some little fun questions. Always ask some little fun ones, just to wind down at the end of the evening. I generally ask the same question to everyone. Get a wide variety of answers. When you were young, racing and coming up through and watching racing, did you have a favourite driver? Because we all had one.
Uh, did I have a favourite driver? I always used to like Ferrari drivers when I was first got into racing. I mean, Senna was always someone because I met him when I was doing karting. So I always was like, when I saw him start to be successful, he was the one I always followed from then on. He was the one, the big man that I would follow, the hero or the thing that way. And then after that it was Michael, because Michael was just special, you know.
Oh, he was. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, anyone who's come across Michael was
Yeah,
always said,
I mean, I remember I met him.
use
I
that
met him
word.
back in Macau, and raced with him in Germany, or did some races in Germany with him. You know, got drunk with him in Macau and stuff like that. But it just a fun guy. You know, I mean, just one of those things. And you knew he was going to be good.
Yeah. I've heard some drinking stories about Schumacher, and I said they always surprise me because obviously he's so.
Yeah, he was.
With racing.
He was.
Apparently, he was a pain in the bum on a night out.
Yeah,
Nicking
we got
people's
kicked
shirts,
out of a
pulling the
night.
pants
We got
down, all
kicked
that.
out of a nightclub for taking our shirts off in Macau. And that he just liked to drink, you know. But we all did that. We all did back then. Yeah.
Why not?
You got Salo, I mean, as well. So.
Oh yeah, he's dark horse from what I could gather. That's terrific. Is there anyone you particularly? I mean, we spoke about this off air, but I mean, is there anyone that you particularly admire now in any series?
I think Lewis. You got to give it to Lewis and Sebastian. I mean, they both done great jobs. And then I just personally, for me, I wish Max Verstappen was better understood, because I think he is. There's something about him that he's so. I find it disappointing when people sort of slag him off. For some of the,
without knowing
when you
him.
see some of the interviews, you see some of the online stuff he does. I think he's very misunderstood, and he's a really, I mean, and he's an incredibly good driver. Those are the sort of four really I would go with.
Yeah, super. We like that. I like this one. I've only started asking it recently, and I guessed one of Oliver Gavin's. Weirdly, do you have any rituals before getting in the car?
First.
You know, when you were
left
racing.
First. Everything is left. I always have to get into the car. I always just have to get into the car with my left foot first, and then one other thing I would do is always do my own belts.
Oh right, you'd always
even the crutch belts, even the lap belt. Everything, because I remember once having a really bad moment with a mechanic and going, I'm never letting anybody else ever do it again. So I would always find a way of either I could just manage to do it, and maybe the lap belt I wouldn't do, but everything was left glove on first. Yeah. And one last thing was, if anyone ever hit my helmet, if I was sat in the car, I'd get out and get back. Get out and get back, take the helmet off and get back in the car. I couldn't handle it. I was like, it's like a bell going off. It's like a bell going off. It's just awful.
Wow.
That's
very cool.
That's I guess it's superstitions. What? It's more superstitions, or I suppose it's a ritual. Yeah.
I quite like that kind of thing, because weirdly, I mean, I've actually got it in the, and I use the same thing. It's do you have any rituals? And it's always, like right glove on first. That's what I always say. But the one time that I said, did you ever put like your left boot on first or something? And Oliver Gavin just went, yeah. Very weird.
It was a weird thing. It was always everything left, never to the right. Yeah, and I'm right-handed. I'm not even left-handed, so it's weird.
How strange. Well,
there you go. Yeah,
there you go. Okay, I mean, was there a series that you would have loved to have had a go in, whether it be, I don't know, sports cars or NASCAR or Aussie V8s, anything like that? You thought, yes, everyone says NASCAR.
I'd love to have done the ovals. I would have loved to get into that, the Talladega or the Daytona slipstreaming effect and learning how to. I would like to have done that. That would have been a lot of fun. They just look like a lot of fun to drive. They look like, they're proper cars, big, heavy cars.
Yeah. Who was it who said recently, when the first time they got into a NASCAR, they was like, what am I doing? I can't remember who it was. It was someone who's done it quite recently. Right. It wasn't Van Gisbergen, because he's done rather well, but I can't. Someone. Oh, it was Helio.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because he did Daytona. And he goes, oh, I want to do Daytona. I want to do NASCAR. I did that. And he got, and Helio can drive anything. He's
Right.
4-time, Helio's Helio. And he got in it and he did like 4 laps and he was thinking, what am I doing in this thing? I can't.
Yeah.
He just said he couldn't get his head around it all. He said it was just incredible.
I think, it goes along with the Aussie V8s. Aussie V8s look like a lot of fun as well. Or supercars. That just looks up. Because they have some great tracks in Australia.
Oh, yeah. I like the street circuit. Is it Townsville? I like the street. I love that street circuit.
But they've got loads
it's a street
of them,
circuit.
They've got loads of them, though, that are really good.
Is it Simmons Plain? There's another one. I like Simmons. And the Sydney. Oh, the Sydney Super Night. That's always a belter. Yeah. There's loads. Yeah, supercars. That'd be cool. Oh, someone just said, did you ever have any lucky underpants?
No. I tried that once where I used to wear the same ones if I'd done well, but that didn't work. As soon as it didn't work, and then I'd give it up. Yeah,
get rid of it. Fair enough. Yeah.
They used to be the same. I suppose there was the thing of like, you'd wear a suit, and if you were doing well, you'd wear the same suit for the weekend. You wouldn't like change suits.
Right.
So, because you would think, okay, everything's feeling good. And it's like, it's going to get the way it's going to get. It's going to get as comfortable as it's going to get. Yeah.
Yeah. So you stick with it. No, feel it. Have you got a favourite car that you've raced? Because you've raced a fair few, haven't you?
Favourite car that I've raced? Wow.
Yeah. It's always a belter, that one.
Ooh, that's a good one. Oh, wow. That's a really good one, actually, because I can't think of a favourite car I've raced.
Oh,
I'd probably say that the 99 season of Indy Lights. Oh no, the 2000 season of Indy Lights. That was a good. The last year of Team Go. When I was still. So I did. What is it? 98, 99. No, the 99 year. That was a good year. That was probably the best car. And I won 3 races that year. So I won Milwaukee, Detroit, and Cleveland. I'd say that's probably my favorite car. Favorite car and favorite year.
Nice one. And it looked the business as well.
Yeah.
I remember that one was a good looking car, which helps. It helps us fans anyway. Okay, 2 more. Well, two and a half more. Have you got a favourite circuit that you've raced on? And is there one that you didn't race on that you would have liked to?
Suzuka is probably the favourite circuit I've driven on. And one that I would have liked to have... Well, the one I'd love to drive on would be Singapore. I'd love to do that with whatever, just to drive around it. I think that would be. There's something about that track at night that just looks really cool.
That's cool. I think you're the first person who said Singapore.
Yeah, it's a race I'd want to go to. It's the one race of. I wouldn't go to many F1 races, but I think that would be one I'd like to go to because it just looks like a good event and everything at night looks better.
Yeah, it looks like Macau, but bigger. That kind of feel.
I mean, it's just got a style about it, and plus Singapore's supposed to be a cool country as well. And it looks like a fun track to drive because it's got lots of everything. It's got hairpins, it's got tight corners, it's got some faster corners. It's good. It seems like an all-encompassing street race. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I'm glad Singapore got mentioned. We like that. Actually, one more I'm going to throw in. I'm guessing, would you have loved to have a go at the 500? The Indy 500?
I would have. Definitely. Yeah, that was one. If there is one thing that would have been something I would have liked to have done. I just didn't want to do it when it was still IRL. Those cars were not. They weren't when it was still the. Because I remember the year when I was saying about the one I did my rookie test. That was the older car, and they just brought in the newer one. But then that was still going through some stages. Yeah, the 500 would have been cool to do. I mean, definitely. It's such an event. It's. We've talked about it. You can't describe what 6 o'clock in the morning when it all starts and all the ceremonies start, and it goes on till 11 o'clock, and then from 11 o'clock there's even more, and then it's just the people. It's the people.
Yeah. And the whole feel about it. I mean, it's like, we got there at 7 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I went full American. I got there 7 a.m., corn dog
There
for
you go.
breakfast, washed down with a can of root beer, and no one judges.
No, I mean, you got there. I mean, I used to get there. We would get there.
Everyone was there at
5 a.m.
It's
But we lived close enough to it that you could hear the race. We used to listen to it on the radio because you couldn't watch it, because you can't watch it live in Indianapolis on TV.
Yes,
which is the most ridiculous thing ever. It's bizarre.
Baffling,
so you can drive 50 miles away and watch it. But we would listen to it on the radio and then watch the highlights or watch the whole race that evening. Because we'd have to wait to get the tape delay to watch it in the evening. But no, I mean, it's amazing how many people they get into it.
Oh, that's incredible. But then getting out,
it's a breeze.
You got 350,000 people. We were out in the car, out the car park, down the road, and back in downtown Indianapolis in just over an hour.
That's crazy. It's crazy.
It takes longer to get out of Brands Hatch after the British Touring Car.
I mean they do things quite well that way.
Yeah, it's superbly done. Yeah, the whole thing, Indy 500. But yeah, I did think you might want to have a crack at it. Okay, right. It's the last question. Horrible question. There's no answer to it really. I don't know why I asked, to be honest, but I do because I'm a pest. You've raced, or you shared the track with a lot of great drivers. Obviously, all the guys in Mexico, and I can't pronounce a lot of them, but they're some very, very good drivers. But you shared the track with guys like Johnny Kane and Ayrton Dare, who I think he was very, very good. And we've got even guys going back to like Bernard Dolan, Calvin Burt, and Jordi Genet, and Sospiri, Rydell, Menu, even Townsend Bell. Christian Fittipaldi shared the track with, and Aurel Servier, big fan of his. Tony Renner, very sad what happened with him. Tony Renner. Guys like Memo Rojas, who's won Daytona, and Ratzenberger, DeFerrin, and Brabham, Weldon, Sarlo, Hakkinen, McNish, Scott Dixon, you shared the track with, I believe, in Indy Lights as well. I mean, are there any that stick out in your mind as not being better, but just sticking out in your mind as being a bit different or a bit?
Yeah, I'd say Hakkinen.
Mika.
Of all of them, he just there was just something about he was just very quick. I remember doing a test at Silverstone, and he was the first person that did cops because it was that was when it was the old track. The pits were still on the cops was the first corner. It's not the first corner anymore, but
cops to me is always the first
corner. But he was the first guy to do it in fifth gear. And it was really weird because he started doing it and it was like, well, that sounded really weird. But he just managed to do something different. And he had a flair about him. He was someone, but out of the car, he was a blast. He was a really fun guy. But you knew he was going to be special. You knew he was going to have something down the road. So yeah, of all of them, I would say. And then the only other one I would say is Scott Dixon. From seeing him as a 17-year-old in Indy Lights, not crash at Milwaukee and do some bits and pieces and struggle, but then to see his transition and how determined, fit, successful, his whole attitude to racing and the way he's kept that. I think he's one of the best ambassadors for IndyCar racing, and IndyCar racing need to really pay him dues for how good he is at what he does, because he's just a well-spoken, always does things well. So those are the two people that stand out for me.
I'm very glad you said about Scott Dixon, because I've said this to a few people in the past. I think probably the most underrated racing driver of the last 20 years.
Such a shame that Formula One didn't happen for him sooner. I think he would have been. It's funny. I think he might have been a good Formula One driver, but I think he's probably better suited to the Indy scene. Yes. There's something about him. I think he's not.
Think he fits into the F1 world.
I don't think he would have. I don't think he would have enjoyed the F1 world as much as the IndyCar world, because I think he fits. There's something about the way he fits in very well to the. I mean, you look at he can't win St. Pete to save his life. He's never won St. Pete.
How on earth has he never won it?
He does something always come. But finally though, he started the year with the second. This has probably been the best year he's had to start a season. or like the
Yeah.
first race of the year. Because when you watch, he's always had something stupid happen.
Finished 15th.
Yeah,
or
I just hope
something,
he
wasn't
wins Indy one more time. He deserves another Indy.
Yeah.
He shouldn't just be a one-time Indy winner.
Yeah, he deserves to be out of
Yeah,
that
he
group,
needs to be in
doesn't
a
he?
two-time at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see that. Very quick, I've got to say one more thing. Mention of Mr. Paul Warwick, who
Uh-huh.
obviously we lost him. You raced our friend Vitalda Marasevska. She has said you raced against him in F3 on the Honda CRX. Love Honda CRX.
We're racing the CRX with him at Brands.
Obviously, everyone loves Paul Warwick. I've spoken with Derek. Yeah. He was a real loss talent, wasn't he? He was top draw.
Yeah, I actually raced with Paul when he did the first. Like I did a couple of junior Formula Ford races in 1986. I raced an old Lola T642 that had been shunted by Andrew Gilbert Scott, and
Yes.
my dad did something to it and got it. And we raced at Silverstone. I did two races at Silverstone when he was doing his first thing. I mean, Paul was. I mean, we raced. He would race when he went to Selnet, when he was one with Glenn Waters in '89.
Yep. Yeah.
It's one of those stupid things, isn't it? Why, out of the blue, does something like that happen at a racetrack that probably 3,000 cars shouldn't have been at? Maybe Alton Park wasn't built for, wasn't big enough for Formula 3000 cars.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah. I mean, they were. I've said this before. They were at that time. I've always said between 88 and kind of 92, that kind of time. Obviously, I was getting a bit more mechanically aware about cars and how they work. And I remember because I was 10, 11. I was 11 when Paul died, and I remember seeing F3000 cars at that time, thinking. I used to think they were scary.
They were.
The kid watching them, rather than watching F1, I was thinking, well, they're fast. And F3, they're cool. F3000, I was like, they are terrifying.
Yeah, and also they weren't. They were very quick for the carbon period that they were at that time. I mean, and so they were trying to keep it to a cost. There was a cost element involved because you couldn't make it to an F1 standard, or the teams couldn't afford to buy them. I mean, it's always tragic when someone dies. I mean, it's always, Jules Bianchi. I mean, there's a tragedy. Senna. There's all of these, and it's funny, isn't it? We go through racing and we don't lose anyone. Then all of a sudden something happens and a driver dies, and you go, "Oh wow, it really is still dangerous." And that's the one thing. That's the one thing I that you take away from racing. We get so blasé because no one's died for ages, and then when somebody does, you go, "Oh shit." Motor racing is dangerous, as it says on the ticket.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of get it with. Unfortunately, I do cover when we lose people because I think it's out of respect. You kind of have to, and it doesn't seem to happen as much on track in cars. I mean, there was one in Australia. I think the chap had a medical episode in the Australian touring cars, not supercars, but in the one. And there was a young girl killed in drag racing, but normally it's on it's the two-wheeled one. Obviously, it happens all the time, doesn't it? And but when it happens on track in a car, it just feels even worse. We had that Alan Simonson was a huge shock at Le Mans the other year, and
but I mean,
that's the thing. It kind of gives you a jolt, doesn't it? And it's
in Formula One, I bet most people wouldn't be able to remember the last driver that was killed in a Formula One car.
No, actually, in
an actual Formula One race. It would be Bianchi was probably the last one I would remember.
There was someone said, I think Max Verstappen is there was something about Max Verstappen. He said that he is I think it was last year, he was the only person on the grid who hadn't seen a death on of a current driver since he'd been in F1 full time. I think he'd done an F1 test, but they said, and that's crazy.
He wasn't around with Bianchi. He wasn't around when Bianchi, wasn't he, racing?
I think he came in the following season. I think. because someone said something about that. I mean, that doesn't sound right, and I checked it, and he'd done it, and he'd been involved in an F1 weekend, but he hadn't raced. And you think that's so weird, given that F1 is so safe. But then you think, because of the Bianchi incident, it was like, well, that's incredible, isn't it? It's become so safe, but yet it's taken someone as recent as Max Verstappen to not witness a fatal accident.
I suppose when you look at,
because obviously Bianchi died a few months later.
Yeah, but you look at. I suppose the last one that could have been serious was Grosjean.
That was the one that,
that was the one that
I went to the F1 exhibition the other week, and I'll tell you one that could have been bad was it Joe at Silverstone when they ground down the blooming airbox?
To me that didn't look too bad because it didn't hit anything really hard.
Yeah, but it was only afterwards I was like, "Where's the airbox?"
Yeah, true.
It was gone. But yeah, Grosjean, that was unbelievable.
I mean, I suppose we do take it for granted, but then again, you look at the other stuff and they still have people. I'm surprised that hasn't in IndyCar. I'm surprised, although I suppose they have that bulletproof halo. The aeroscreen. I almost think that makes some of them at Indy think that they can get away with more.
Yeah.
There's an almost. It's like they're building the bulletproof now. I'm not going to get hurt.
Yeah, because it was in the first race. Was it Hunter Ray? And someone in the first race of the season, and it hit the aeroscreen, and the car bounced off the aeroscreen. And I think it was Hunter Ray, and he just pulled off at the side of the circuit and they said, "What's wrong with the car?" I went, "Nothing."
I know, it's crazy.
But I think
I'm not sure. I suppose they need the aeroscreen for the speeds they're doing. It seems. I'm surprised Formula One hasn't gone that way.
Yeah, I always thought it was a better. I think it looks better. I think the halo makes it look like it's a flip flop.
Yeah, true. But then, the halo is just, if you put the perspex in that you put on the aeroscreen, it would look the same. So I suppose they've just done. I mean, they've done what they've done. It's funny, isn't it, when you see them driving without the halo, how alien it looks.
It does look odd now, doesn't it? I remember that first year we thought, "Oh, that looks horrible."
But now it's like,
but now we look back, it's like
you see it and you go, "Oh, that head that doesn't look right."
That looks dangerous.
Isn't it funny? It looks dangerous. Yet we never thought it was dangerous until what I suppose Felipe Massa's thing was.
It was the Massa one, wasn't it? But yeah, just obviously, it's very sad when we lose drivers, and hopefully we're not going to lose any more. Not for a while, anyway.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, but no, I think that's a good way to end. Looking to the future.
Right.
Future
Let's see who wins the Australian Grand Prix.
Absolutely, yes, that's coming up. An Australian has never won the Australian Grand Prix. So there you go. Oscar Piastri.
Oscar Piastri for world champion. Why not?
Yeah.
Although Lewis would be the best. Lewis would be a good pick, but
yeah, we'll have to see how they get on with the regs next year. But we shall see. We'll see how we go.
The big one out there. You say Kimi Antonelli will win it all, and you'd be like, "Whoa, that'll be the end of all of them. That'll be the end of all the old guys."
Yeah, that'll be it. Yeah, done.
All the young guys will be back in.
Yeah, that'll be it. Great stuff. And Keith Mail has said, "I'm with you on that one, Derek." Yes, Oscar for the championship.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Firstly, guys, thank you very much. I have seen all the comments and the questions. Thank you very much for tuning in. Derek, biggest thanks to you. It's 2 hours, over 2.5 hours. It's flown by. I've absolutely loved it. It's been brilliant hearing your insights from behind the wheel and up on the grandstand and all that. And thank you very much for sparing your time. Much appreciated.
Take care. Bye.
Great stuff.